Good morning. I now call the June 4th, 2020 Administrative Briefing and Work Session of the Marion County School Board to order at 9 o'clock a.m. Please silence your electronic devices to avoid disturbing others. I will now ask the school board attorney to explain the rules for this board meeting.
This work session is a public meeting as defined by Florida Sunshine Law. The board is dedicated to full transparency in its meeting and its work. In compliance with the Sunshine Law, the board has adopted uniform meeting procedures, including the right for citizens to participate. The board will allow public comment regarding any work session item listed on the agenda at the appropriate time. Speakers must fill out a request form and hand it to the school board secretary. After the board and superintendent have completed their discussion of a particular agenda item, the secretary will call the speaker's name in the order received. At the podium, the speakers are asked to state their full name and address and to spell their last names. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. As required by the Sunshine Law, the board must maintain orderly conduct and proper decorum throughout this meeting. Speakers may criticize subject matter and decisions in a respectful manner, but not people. Finally, speakers must be very careful not to violate the privacy rights of others, especially students and their family members, by mentioning their name or other identifying information. Thank you.
We'll now begin the work session with our superintendent's administrative briefing.
Thank you very much, Reverend Chair. And we have a robust administrative briefing to keep you all updated on the happenings. And the first up today is going to be Mr. McAteer. He's going to pop in and give a few updates on graduation, how we're doing with that.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We have spent a lot of time and a lot of effort with our high school principals, with Amelia Bray's staff, Kevin Christian, with a lot of folks really trying to do the best we can under the circumstances to create the graduations that we can, and realistically, with the restraints that are still on us. We've had great support from our public officials, and one of the things that we don't want to do is erode that support at all by making sure that we have stayed with the plan that we have talked about since day one this board approved. I came to you 3 different times. We talked through it. Plan hasn't changed. The only thing that has changed is mailing of diplomas. We've come up with a way for students to pick up their diplomas. Different schools are doing it different ways. I told them they cannot have them on tables at graduation like in the past because that will create too many large groups, but they may have them on chairs in an envelope because the students' chairs will be labeled, and they will be, a couple schools are doing drive-bys before to pick up their diploma, and a couple schools are doing drive-bys after. So, I mean, I've allowed them creativity there, but that's one of the things that originally we had said, but looking at our current financial situation and making sure that we are prudent with taxpayers' money. It wasn't a good use of our money to use stamps for that when we can find up another way to be able to do it because we have so many things that our folks are turning in right now anyway. I mean, I know that a lot of folks will probably give them something else that day, like we've done pretty much everything we've done. Even in our elementary and middle schools, we've tried to combine activities so that when we do those things that we are prudent in making sure that we're not asking parents also to spend lots of money coming back and forth to the school. So, I mean, I think a lot of you are on Twitter and you've seen a lot of the great things that are happening at all our schools, K-12, and a lot of the creative ideas that are happening to try to celebrate our students. So one of the things that I do want to make sure that the board understands is that when we talked about social distancing, we went out, myself, I went to all 7 high schools. Area directors joined me at most of those schools. All of them are at least one. We've got a crew of people. The principals came out, some of the assistant principals, and we actually taped down 9 foot 4 inches, which is what a couple would be if you had 2 people together, so 6 foot, 9 foot 4 inches, and we did the entire stands. The reality is our stands aren't large enough at any of our schools, save maybe one, to be able to do that. So we're able to put chairs on the track, we're able to put chairs in the back, but even with social distancing, we are going to be jam-packed. So I just want to make sure that you know that. Now, the principals are very creative at how they're bringing people in and out. They're creating sections. They're bringing them in time frames, just like they've been doing with their drive-throughs. There's a lot of different things that they're doing, and we've talked through. Dennis McFadden's group has been a big help. This has been a team effort. David Ellers and Student Services working with Andrea Simmons and talking to different folks. And just we've had a lot of conversations about what the best ways to do this is. And the reality is there's not one best way for that depending on your facility. What works at Booster Stadium doesn't work at Dunellen High School. And our stadiums, what I've learned is I've pretty much seen every stadium seat in our district, and I've been to them thousands of times over the years, it seems like, as a high school principal and as a student and as a teacher, dean, coach, and I never realized how different our stadiums are until you actually go up there and you put the tape down and you measure, take the tape measure. But that's the efforts that we're doing. And again, what we've shared with our principals to share with their folks is we understand that, this is hard. But COVID-19 is hard. And we wanted to make sure, one of the things that we wanted to make sure is that we did this where we honored students, and they did ask to have one ceremony. All the high school principals that I spoke to that spoke to students said they wanted one ceremony. They didn't want multiple ceremonies. And multiple ceremonies, that's one of the things that I've heard from a few people, would not be cost effective. Number one, we have summer school in session at that time, taking whole admin teams off of campus 2 and 3, ceremonies during a day, that's not cost effective. Paying for law enforcement and ambulances for 2 or 3, that's not cost effective because those costs are very high. And Dennis has been very nice to us, but at the end of the day, it still comes from public funds. So we had to really, really look at that. We also, we just wanted to make sure that we had enough time to be able to pack, because we don't have Amelia Bray, if you've ever worked with her folks, they're miracle workers. But they have to sanitize every chair. And our district only has 3,000 chairs that we use. And with the stadium seating and some of the things that we're going to have to do on the tracks and things like that to make sure everybody's way spread out, she's got to take time, sanitize. Before she packs those chairs up, she sanitizes every chair. And she has a crew. She moves them. She moves the stages. And then myself and the area directors and a few other volunteers, folks in the community that have volunteered to come in and help, we take the tape measures and we lay out the chairs. With the high school principals, Amelia's crew puts together the stage. So this really is a very intricate operation that goes day to day. There's not, except for once we start on the 15th, except for Sunday, we don't quit until the 22nd. The 12th is a smaller ceremony, so that will be kind of like a dry run for us on some things. But I just wanted to give you an update on what we did. We tried to be very transparent. I believe I've said the same thing to you now 4 times. And we also met with the high school principals and gave them a handout or an insert to put on their websites to do a Skyward with their seniors and to pass out with their tickets to be able to make sure that we're very upfront. I know that things have changed in certain ways in our state, but the large group thing still hasn't changed. We've got to make sure that we're in open air, which we are, and we've got to make sure that we have people spaced apart and that we stick to what we said we were going to do. So I certainly know it's painful for a lot of people. Again, I can't say this enough times because I feel terrible, but my parents can't go to my niece's graduation. I feel terrible about that. But at the end of the day, we're trying to give these students what we can give them in the best possible way. So I appreciate your support. You've been very supportive with me. There's things, but just so that's kind of where we're at. And we're working very hard to try to make sure that we have enough different items, to be able to have space for law enforcement, to be able to have space for ambulances, to be able to have space for the stages. You're going to see the stages pushed a lot farther up towards the goalposts than you've probably ever seen at a Westport or a Bellevue graduation, because we want to maximize every inch of space on that field, because football fields are very large. That's another thing I learned. The stands are a lot smaller than I thought they were, but the football fields are a lot larger. And we have different size tracks in our district, which I never realized, being the principal of only 2 schools. And Bellevue High School doesn't have a track. So, we have different challenges, but we're trying to meet them. But I just want to assure you and the public that we are cognizant of the pain that it's causing. We get it. But at the same time, we have to make sure that we did, and we did what we said we were going to do and what we told you. So I just wanted to, if there's any questions, I'll be glad to field them.
Good job.
Thank you for your support. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Chair, there is a public comment on graduation, and this would be the ideal time to do it.
We can go ahead and bring him in during comment. Is that the only one?
Good morning. You guys will have to excuse me. I literally worked overnight, so I'm a little bit. My name's James Atherton. I live at 5334 Southwest 178th Terrace, Dunellen, Florida. I heard and understood everything the gentleman that just spoke said about graduation, and I'm totally sympathetic to that. I'm in the same situation that a lot of parents are in. I'm a step parent. I've got 4 kids that are in Marion County Public Schools, 2 biological children and 2 stepchildren. My oldest daughter is graduating from Vanguard. She's dual enrolled on the 15th at Booster Stadium, and she's a mess. The graduation was, grad bash was canceled, prom was canceled. She literally walks around our house sometimes in her prom dress. And now you have to pick between their biological parents and the step parents being involved in part of this graduation process. And I understand that there's money involved and there's all these things involved. One of the things that I suggested to the many people that I've talked to is that we have 2 ceremonies, just to split them up, like to split them in half. So there's still a bunch of kids there that they're graduating with, but they could put more parents in the stands. If you just at least had 4 parents, which a lot of the parents in Marion County, especially, I've come to find out there's a lot of mixed homes where you've got stepfathers and stepmoms, and it's a decision we're putting on these kids who exactly they want to have come to these graduations. Now, I have a elderly mom. I have my wife has a mother who's older, so all these grandmothers and stuff like that are ready to come. Yeah, that's horrible, but you invest so much time with your children, whether they're your stepchildren or not, and to not be able to celebrate that with them is heartbreaking. To have to sit in the car and watch it on YouTube is not the same as being able to be there. I can't take the pictures. I can't do any of that stuff. So you're kind of, and I understand COVID's horrible. The whole situation. I work for Chewy, and the steps that we take for our team members, that just walking in the building and scanning them for their the temperature and all that good stuff, are tremendous. And I understand that there's so much stuff going on right now, but the fact that only 2, being able to pick 2 people is not as easy as it used to be. My parents have been married for almost 50 years, and I've been divorced twice. So it's one of those situations where times have changed, and there's a lot more going into raising a child than there used to be. So I would really just ask you guys to, look at that a little bit. I don't need much space. I'm bigger than I used to be, but I'm a little guy. To squeeze me in the back so I can take some pictures, or bring people in waves or something. I don't know. But I totally understand that there's a lot of moving parts here. There's a lot of graduations. There's a lot of that stuff. But we just want the opportunity, if it's just for a minute, to be there for our kids and scream for them and walk away. I totally understand, how difficult it is. And the gentleman who just spoke, I understand all that stuff. But,
Thank you, Mr. Atherton. Thank you. It will be considered. We're hearing you, and Mr. McIntyre has put a plan together, and right now we don't see it changing. I don't want to sound unsympathetic or anything like that, because I am. We're in the same boat. My family's in the same boat. But right now, that's the plan that we're at, and it's not changing.
And I'm glad you came in, because it just signifies that we really are all in this
Yes.
together. And sometimes when you come forward and you put that out there, even if what you're getting in return is sympathy and understanding and not necessarily a change to the plan, it's important, because none of us have been unaffected by this. And we're all part of this same community trying to make the best decisions we can. And I'm reminded of a statement, I hate cancer. And I feel like we need to be saying that about COVID. I hate COVID-19 because of what it has done to all of us at some level. So please know that
here's the
even
thing,
if
right?
we may not be changing the plan, it doesn't mean that you don't have our
Right.
sympathy.
Here's the thing. I understand all that, and I really appreciate all of you guys. But as a parent, I would be remiss and I would be neglectful if I was not here right now standing in front of you.
Right.
Even if this changes
Right.
nothing,
Right.
even if nothing happens, and I'm honestly kind of upset that there's nobody else here doing that.
Well,
You know,
even
I
though,
mean-
no, let me say this, even though nobody else is here, I promise you,
have heard.
we're getting phone calls, we're getting texts, we're getting people stopping us in stores or whatever. This is not just your issue. This is the issue of the whole county, and not just our county, everywhere. This is the same issue, so everybody's dealing with the same thing, but the plan that Mr. McAteer has put together has to be the best plan that fits for Marion County. We're not, believe me, we're not unsympathetic. We're not cold about this at all. We feel the same pain that you feel. I feel it when I got to talk to a mom saying that she can't see her kid processional in and you know, march around the field and all that stuff. But as Mr. McAteer just gave us, he gave us a reason why you can't use the track. And it hasn't been a knee-jerk response to this. It's been well thought out. And we just want you to celebrate your child's graduating, but we want to be safe, and that's where we have to be. But I thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Dr. Mayor?
Next, Dr. Ellers has an update on our external operator contract.
Morning, Reverend Chair Cummings, Board,
morning.
Mr. Christian.
Dr. Mayor,
Thank you.
Ms. Presbyterian, thank you so much for being here and all you do. I am here just to give you a brief update, as Dr. Mayor said. As you're aware, you approved the external operators contract for Mrs. Elsperman for Evergreen and Oakcrest. And once you signed on the dotted line, we sent it immediately to the state, and the state reviewed the contract and basically took exception with one sentence that was in the Evergreen contract that was not in the Oakcrest contract. That one sentence does not change delivery of service, it doesn't change cost to the district, it doesn't change anything other than the state didn't want that sentence in there for Evergreen. So what I did for you on this PowerPoint was I just crossed out in red the words they want removed and what the sentence looks like with the words gone. So yes, the contract was rejected. However, once the board agrees to this change, we can resubmit it to the state, and we should not have any further issues, as I have an email that says this is what they want. So,
Dr. Ellers,
yes, sir.
the deadline to get, they want this back by Monday, correct?
Yes, this is a tight, we're already beyond what,
We have to take this back through the whole board meeting, or can we have consensus today, since we have already approved that contract?
You can get consensus today and for her to go ahead and submit and then do the official vote as an emergency item Tuesday night.
Or for cause, or
Yeah.
for cause?
I'm fine with it.
I'm fine.
Reverend Cummings?
Ms. Stacy, go ahead.
Yes, since I can't see the PowerPoint or the screen, can you just read me the sentence?
The sentence that they wanted taken out, Ms. Stacy, was as a result of FDOE/SBE rejection of the proposed plan. It's on, I'm not sure what page of the contract it's on, but it was just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 words were stricken from that contract. Page 2.
So what were the,
Page 2, Section B, the very last 10 words of that section of that contract.
and Mrs. Stacy,
so what are the words they don't like?
we're not replacing any words, we're just taking that sentence out so that it matches Oakcrest's contract. That's all we're doing.
Okay.
And like I said, it doesn't change the cost, it doesn't change delivery of service or Mrs. Osmerman's obligation to the district.
What were those words put in there for?
They were in the original Evergreen contract prior to Oakcrest being also added, and the state had told us, because of COVID and because of where we stand with setting our schools back to where we were in August, the state told
Yeah.
us to just resubmit the original contracts. So we resubmitted
Okay.
as they said, but then they decided that they wanted a change. But don't forget, Evergreen was in this contractual agreement longer than Oakcrest, so I think that's why when they gave us that blanket directive, I don't think that they took that into consideration.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So, Ms. Stacy, you're in agreement with us? The other four
Yes.
are? Okay. So we do have consensus. And for the record, let me say this for the record, Ms. Stacy has joined us by telephone. Okay. So we do have consensus. So please go ahead and get that back to DOE, and we'll have it on our agenda for Tuesday night for calls.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Boston, our Director of Title I, has a brief update for you on some plans for the summer, and she'd like your blessing. I think you'll be very happy when you hear this.
Good morning,
Good morning.
Board Chair Cummings, Vice Chair Mrs. Throer, board members, Dr. Mayor, Attorney Green, Ms. Prespino. Good morning again. So I'm here this morning to speak to you briefly about possible opportunities for our students in Marion County that can be funded through our 21st Century Learning Community and Title I. You know the premise of Title I, but just as a quick reminder, the 21st Century program is designed to provide academic enrichment, which includes tutoring, activities that promote positive youth and character development, and also offers families after-school and summer activities that are basically focused on enrichment. We have 10 21st Century schools, 5 elementary and 5 middle. When our students did not return from spring break because of COVID-19, our schools did not continue the 21st Century programs, and because of a lot of unknown, we did not move forward with the summer program as well. It was all with the intent, however, of opening up the program in the fall once school reopened. A few days ago, we learned that it was okay to not do the 21st Century program. However, the unused funds would have to be returned. And I don't think we want to return funds. So with that being said, the question is, can we begin to explore the possibility of bringing small groups of students back to schools? These 21st Century funds can be used to bring some of our students back on a small scale, and in turn will provide staff at schools and our district staff as well the experience of what a full return might look like and sound like when the time, comes. In addition to those 21st Century funds, I do also have funding set aside for tutoring at our Title I schools. And so that also would be an opportunity to bring small groups of students back. With the Title I funds, it would be more of an academic focus for those kids. So I'm here today to ask your approval to move forward with a plan to bring some of our kids back. This is a quick conversation. There is a lot of details to consider, making sure we're following CDC guidelines. I have a nice little list here, but a group of district administrators, school-based staff would work very diligently to make sure that we are prepared for this small reopening and then in turn preparing for a full return. So I'm here to ask your approval to move forward with a plan to do a soft opening.
I have a question. How much funds are we looking at? I'm curious what the amount is.
In terms of 21st Century,
Yes.
in the neighborhood of 300,000
So we're looking at 300,000.
return.
Okay.
That we would have to get back.
Correct. Okay.
And how soon would you have this plan complete and ready to go with this?
How soon would you like it? We're able to move forward.
I think as soon as
As
possible.
soon as possible. I mean, I love the idea of bringing kids back in small groups and doing all the CDC guidelines. I mean, I'm all about getting these kids back in those seats in those classrooms. So anything we can do to start moving that, I'm all for.
You have my support.
feel the same, and, you know, everything just unfolds so quickly, and that just, it makes it to where then we just have to be quick, and that makes me a little bit uneasy, because we want to make sure that whatever we're doing is going to, as you were saying, follow the CDC guidelines, be safe, be relevant, be interested to hear, you know, what the tutoring programs are going to be, and the details of that, but that's for a future conversation. As far as it's now being a possibility, that is fantastic. I mean, we need to get eyes on our kids. And
Reverend Cummins?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead, Ms. Stacy.
Yes, I'm definitely for that. The governor stated publicly that not a single child under 25 has died from COVID, but he did the same for the flu. So there is absolutely no reason not to bring kids back. None.
kids have to be supervised by adults, so there's that, but the benefit outweighs the risk when done appropriately.
Yeah, and that's me. As long as it's done planfully, purposely, and not just gathering everyone just so we cannot, return 300,000 back. I hope you would share with us what that plan is, and so that we know, because I want it to be done safely. Because remember, that's our most important job, is to make sure that everything we do is with integrity and safely, and for the protection and well-being of our students and our staff members.
Absolutely. And we have executive directors, area directors, transportation, food service, custodial, Boston Ellis's department, making sure we have those protected devices for them. We're practicing social distancing. And so, yes, we have lots to consider, but we needed your support and approval before we began to move forward.
You have this board's support.
Thank you.
Let's go.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Phillips is going to come in next, and he has an update for you on summer activities and athletics.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Very much appreciate the opportunity, Ms. Prespino, Chair Cummins, Vice Chair Thrower, board members, Dr. Mayer, Ms. Green. If you will, divulge me here a little, we'll move through it. If you want to stop and ask questions, I'm more than happy to do so. I'll try to make it quick.
All in your hand.
Okay.
Take us downfield. Let's get there.
Okay. Let's do it.
Hike.
All right, here we go. So just to preview a little bit about who was involved, I don't know that the number, I talked to someone this morning, I don't know that it was 100, but it was over 50 people, I can tell you that. And there was numerous review groups and folks that we had involved. And I want all of you to know that we've got incredible people that work here. And I mean, they have put in time with this with me. This is way further than me. So don't even think that at all. There are so many people that have given their time and been willing to be a part of this, because they know how important it is for our students and even our staff members to get back in this capacity and do things that we know they're all excited about doing. So just again, sources from information that we reviewed. This is just a handful of them. This is probably where I would say the majority of it came. And but there were certainly lots of other resources that were used and reviewed as well. But just to kind of solidify that. So as we started working, and one of the things I shared with all the folks that I was working with was the idea of what kind of standard and how we would execute this plan, because we're talking about hundreds of employees, coaches, sponsors, and we're talking thousands of kids potentially that are going to be involved in this process. And as I mentioned to a couple folks, if the process involved 35 or 40 people, real simple, no big deal. We'd have been doing it weeks ago and moving forward. That's just simply not the case. So at any rate, the thought process for me, and I just wanted to create a visual for you guys to understand that I didn't feel like we wanted 15, 20 pages of rules and things for everyone to try to traverse through this. So the thought was, we've got a set of general expectations that a coach, a sponsor, a principal will have, and they will exist the whole entire time that we return during this summer period. They can have that as one page, and then on, let's call it the second page, will be whatever quarter of return that we are in. So at any one time, those folks are looking at those 2 pages and they're concentrating, okay, these are the things that we need to be doing and making sure that our staff and students are safe and focused on. All right, so that was the concept. Now, there's certainly other specific items that will be addressed, they'll be trained on and such, and how to handle a positive case, and you'll see that in there and such. So, but day-to-day operationally, it's 2 pages, and that's what we want them focused on. So that was the thought process. Everyone thought that was great, and it is executable. And again, 3 things we worked on: formidable, executable, and safe. That's what we needed. Okay, so just some resource options and availability that we have for the students and staff. Ms. Johnson, amazing, unbelievable, as always. We're going to provide daily feeding option for the students, like a lunchtime type meal. It'll be a cold type meal so that it's easily kept, and the coaches can access it at the times that they need it and distribute it, or the sponsors, and distribute it to the kids that are rostered and that are scheduled and working with us. School counseling will be available. I think Mr. McGowan's here and he can expand on that a little bit, but they will be there throughout the summer as well to help, and then certainly psychological services for any of the students that we deem necessary. We can go directly through the principals and access that on an as-needed basis, and basically that's day-to-day as needed. This particular slide with all the 4 quarters is just a reiteration of what we talked about in the previous work session back in May. That was an overview for you guys to allow us to move forward with the plan. And in that, we heard and understood that there was an expectation to move, quickly, but with the understanding that we still wanted it to be safe and effective. Some general things, and again, guys, what I'm going to do is highlight for you in this presentation everything that is mirrored in the actual document that the schools use. So it may not be every single detail, of course, in the presentation, but it could be found in the document. But I'll highlight some things here for you that we're going to work through. As a general expectation to start with, our summer activities are voluntary. We don't force students to do something to be a part of a program, with a small exception generally of the cheerleading tryouts, because it's very difficult to conduct multiple tryouts. Outside of that activity, the things that get conducted through the summertime, and that's a very small window of time, but a volleyball player does not have to attend a certain number of activities over the summer to be a part of the team in the fall. It's not allowable by rule, number one, but that's just how we operate in general terms. So students can't make it, parents don't want them to attend, but they change their mind in the fall, there's certainly going to be availability for those students to come participate. So that's probably most important, is that we're working hard. Kerry Cook and his folks, the head custodians, have been meeting with the athletic directors on the campuses. We're involving even the coaches, the principals, and Kerry, just amazing. The head custodians, amazing. getting some very, very detailed plans, and most of it has already been in action and is pretty well set. The products that he has are detailed down to how we're cleaning the cheerleading mats and, high-touch surfaces, how we're cleaning the weight equipment, how that's going to be done, all of that he's worked through. And again, the custodial folks at the specific schools have even been involved in all of that process and more than willing to do so.
Can I ask one question on that? Are our
Yes.
students going to be allowed to use the locker rooms this summer? or not?
It's,
Is that in-
yes, ma'am, it is, but, yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank
It's kind of by quarter, and you'll see that, yes, ma'am. We're not sharing. We're somewhat used to it. I don't necessarily say to the extreme that we're going to be now, but this has been pretty commonplace for us in what we do, correcting and educating students constantly. We don't share towels, we don't share razors, we don't share water bottles. That's been going on for years now, so it's not uncommon. We're just going to have to really be more aware and really push it. And as I keep telling our coaches and our folks, we're not turning a blind eye. We're not. So, we're asking them to make sure that they do have a reading component as part of their program. And Dr. Mayer feel that this is important. We have lost time with the students. There's no reason that we can't encourage that on a daily basis to help students over the summer, even specifically ones that may not be enrolled in any type of online activity or anything of that nature educationally. So, and then lastly on that page, no visitors on campus. We feel that badged folks, not school volunteers yet, until further notice, it will be badged folks that are going to be on campus, and then the students that attend that school will be on campus. We won't mix in any middle school. There's no elementary camps, sport camps, things of that nature going on. We feel it best that we keep the students, and we could go into a myriad of reasons, and one I'll touch on in a minute, which is about keeping the groups in the pods the same for exposure purposes, and so that if there is an outbreak of some sort, we can control it a little better. So, okay, one other thing, of course, the education of the hand sanitizing. One of the methods in one door, have hand sanitizing stations at entry points and at all exit points. And then, of course, there'll be some available, whether it's wall form or bottle form, to use as needed maybe, but we're going to really hammer home entry, exit, hand sanitizing. So supervising coaches, sponsors, you can see, again, they're all going to have to wear their badges. And there will always be a CPR and first aid certified coach or sponsor that is present during all activities. Indoor, outdoor, whatever it may be, that always needs to take place. And some of that is reflective of some of the things that are going to be required FHSAA-wise and from the House Bill 7011 that are coming into effect July 1st. But we're going to do it on day one because it only makes sense and it's safer. So
Does that also include the ice tubs?
yes, ma'am. That's part of it. Yes, ma'am. And we'll touch on that too. Of course, all the students have to be cleared formally the way that we would normally clear them through any process. If it's a pre-participation physical, liability forms, a screening form that we're going to get from them. And I will tell you, there will even be a couple of schools I know have already mentioned that they're going to have their online training with the students. They're going to have a couple of videos, and they're going to ask the students to sign something and say that they've watched it in order to feel like they've touched all of them and that they are prepared. And then if they weren't, then we'll have to figure out a way to get a lab and get those students to watch the video or whatever it takes. I mean, and believe me, these folks are more than willing to do what we need to do. They want the kids back. That's the goal. So, let's see. One of the things too, you'll see in some of this a containment bag that we're asking them to bring and about fluids and such, because we can't have water troughs. We can't, if we're doing outside activity, normally, we have two big PVC water troughs that shoot the water out and so on. Or we have, of course, coolers, and kids can walk up, fill their water bottle. We won't be allowing any students to touch water containers. Fountains will be taped off. The only access that anyone will have would be a staff member, gloved, and handling all of those things properly. We will have pre-filled cups and a water station for every activity that's going on, but it will be completely controlled through a staff member, and students, the only thing that they would touch would be the disposable cup and drink the water, throw the cup away at this point. And then lastly, to move on to the specific quarters, but if someone is symptomatic, as a general expectation, we are going to remove them, and we will certainly contact parents and conversations and do everything appropriately, but we will have to address it that way. And listen, our coaches are unbelievable, just like the teachers in the classrooms are with these students. There will be a few new incoming ninth graders that we may not be as familiar with, but these students that have been around these folks day in and day out for years, they know them. They know them well. They communicate well with them. So they will know when their actions are speaking, and they will notice if things are not correct. They'll pull them aside, and they'll find out what's going on. And certainly if there's symptoms that are showing, coughing and things of that nature, that's a little easier, but in general terms, our coaches will take care of it, because again, they want to protect the students and the whole as much as that one student. So first quarter, things that are going on currently, they're having coaching sessions with them, they're teaching them things, whether it's about the game, or education. Yes, ma'am, and it is virtual. Yes, ma'am, and that, I'm sorry, that's yes, online through Zoom, through video links, motivationally encouraging, and that's happening quite frequently with numerous programs. So moving to the second quarter, and you can see that our tentative date is June 10th for that. And let me just preface it by saying our plan, and we heard you, that before we wanted to be flexible, and certainly we were doing the best we could to attain as high of a standard of return and as quickly as we could. And as we began to look at it, we felt like we could even do better than June 15th. And so June 10th came into play. On June 8th and 9th, we will be training, not me, we meaning all of the schools and the various folks, administration, athletic directors, activities directors, and such will be meeting with personnel that expect to have these activities between June 10th and July 26th. At this point would be the fall for what we would consider summer. Understand that may change. It may change by way of you guys. It may change by way of a governing body. That's just a tentative situation. But at any rate, small groups start June 10th. We will be working in 1 to 10s and the assigned groups and pods. Everyone will be scheduled according to that. I remember Ms. McCall's question last time, could we potentially have 4 groups of one specific activity going on at one time, 4 groups of 10? Certainly. 1 in the weight room, 2 out on the field of play, 1 in the gym, cafeteria, whatever, and but the key here that we're really trying to hammer home with everyone is those pods and groups stay the same. If 4 kids show up in this group and 4 kids show up in another group, we do not merge them. They stay the same always. We're now 1 to 4, so that we again can control the exposures. Our maximum time limit during this period will be 90 minutes, and it will be once a day. If they schedule a 60-minute period and that student shows up that day, then it's 60 minutes. It's a maximum of 90. The student will only come on campus 1 time. So it's going to allow us to begin to understand these procedures and concepts well. And the coaches that were part of the review process, everyone part of the review process totally gets it, and they are behind this, and they feel there's a lot of value to it happening this way. And also during that time, just next on the list, locker room showers are not to be utilized. Everyone needs to come dressed ready to participate. Students are we're gonna, I don't want to say force them, but we want them to bring this containment bag, because they need to have other things appropriate that they may use, whether it's the fluids, whether it's a towel, a change of clothes in case something was to happen, or whatever, so that they are prepared. And we may not meet that on day 1, but certainly through a day or two's worth of education, more and forcing their hand a bit, we'll improve on it daily. But
So like a duffel bag? Or
yes, correct. Yes, correct. Yes. We will make the male and female restrooms available. However, through a lot of discussion with the review groups and both medically and just in general terms, folks, the best proposition we feel is to allow 1 student at a time, again, with the mindset of enter, sanitize hands. There will be sanitizing stations. Sanitize, use the restroom facility, sanitize their hands on exit as well. And then, because reality, again, let's go back to being executable. We're not going to be able to sanitize the facility every time a student uses a restroom. And we can't open 8 restrooms. I don't feel that that's executable, and I just don't see us being successful with it. So 1 student at a time, and again, just hammering home for them the idea of cleaning their hands, and hopefully by sanitizing on the way in, as they touch, they're touching with the sanitized hands, and certainly the restrooms will be sanitized on a daily basis before, and then after use as the day goes on. Equipment and training rooms are closed to the public. It'll be employee access as needed is the way that we are instructing it. Certainly they may have to get in there for a cooler, those type things, but we're not opening up the door and handing out any equipment or doing anything. We're not going into the training room every day and taking students to tape them or do anything of that nature.
How is that going to happen if they need to be taped or looked at?
They're going to need to do that on their own, in the sense they will need to do it on their own to a certain extent. We will have first aid kits and things of that nature.
Will be available. They just won't go in the training room.
Our trainers don't work over this. Our trainers are actually done they work a 196.
Okay.
So it will be up to the coaches, and they all have established kits. So they can do taping to a certain extent, and certainly first aid and all of those things, but our normal training room process is not, and it's not normal for us over the summer. Cooling stations, to Ms. Thrower's earlier point, cooling stations have to be available if outside activity exists. So we've been coaching this for a while. It's been a principle of ours now for 3 years. So this is not necessarily new to us. It is state law now. So it brings on a different accord. Before it was Dr. Mayer and Jody and the board holding firm to that, and now it's Florida statute. So it works a lot differently. and everyone knows and understands that. So, at any rate, and then during this quarter, we are only weight training and conditioning. Okay? There will be no sport-specific equipment, balls, anything of that used during second quarter. This is strictly a focus on getting the students acclimated, returned. Let's get physically fit over this time period and use the time to do that wisely. And it's something that we need to do. Third quarter, again, we can expand here. And we all know yesterday, second phase for the state. But for us, this third quarter starts tentatively on June 22nd. And again, if there's something that we don't like, that you don't like, that you see or hear about, and we find that we need to reassess what we're doing, then June 22nd may not be the day. We may need a little more time, possibly. I don't anticipate that, but it could happen. So we will stick with the 1 to 10 inside facilities. And again, understand as we say 1 to 10 inside facilities, you have an extremely large gym, and that could be a little different, because one of the things we're asking the outdoor groups or the large building groups, if they can separate by 50 feet, the groups of 10, that's what we want to see. So certainly in a gym, we can separate 2, maybe even 3 groups in some large gyms by 50 feet to where, so in your mind, don't think that we're going to take a gym and only put 10 students in there to work on something at a time. It's just the 1 to 10 supervision. But even when we expand to 50 outdoors during this time period, I've cautioned all of the folks to understand you're creating more exposures. So something happens with that group of 50, you got to understand if there's an exposure or there's a positive, now all of a sudden we've got 50 or 60, 50 to 53 people or 54 people, depending on staff, involved in that process now. So it may not be our best choice to do that, and we may want to continue to manage in 1 to 10s. So the one thing that I would hope is that you don't take that option away from them. I want them to be able to decide that for themselves and have the choice. I don't want to make that decision for them if it's available. They just need to understand and be educated on the potential consequences, and if they're good with it, then they're good with it. But I don't think that I would necessarily want to decide that for them. They know better than I what's best for their team and their band or whatever organization it may be. Maximum participation time during this is going to be 1 session per activity per day, with a 2.5-hour time limit per student per day. So let me kind of draw this for you. The reason this got wordy is because we do have students. The first part was all strength and conditioning. It really doesn't matter what coach or what program they work with. We just want them getting back in tune, getting in shape. As we move into this time where we're offering sport-specific activities, we're going to begin to dribble basketballs and hit volleyballs and throw baseballs and such, throw football, whatever it may be. We certainly have multiple students that are multi-sport athletes, and we can't begin to make them choose, well, I'm only going to the volleyball practice and I'm not going to basketball practice. We don't want that to happen, and we don't want kids having to make that choice. The only choice that the coaches will have to work through is okay, on Mondays and Wednesdays, Jenny can come for an hour and a half to volleyball, and on Tuesdays and Thursdays they go to soccer for an hour and a half, and then of course the other hour would be with the other sport. But it's 2.5 hours per day maximum contact, and then only 1 session. So again, how we will reiterate is only 1 session, meaning if volleyball has 2 sessions, they can't go They can only attend one of them. She can't go to volleyball and soccer and then go back to volleyball. We do not want that going on either. We completely get that you've got two things going on. If it's a person that's a three-sport athlete, I don't know that we have many of those any longer. That's just kind of, honestly, even two-sport athletes are a little bit, hard to find. We're into a lot of specialization, which is fine. But if there's a three-sport athlete, we will address that, and we'll work it out with the students and families as we need to. As we mentioned, sports-specific can continue, but we are not having any kind of competitive drills during this time. Think of it in this manner. If we're on a volleyball court, everything that we would be doing would be, let's say, as a group or whatever it is offensively. Nobody is defending us. In a basketball gym, we can certainly dribble. We can work on layups and free throws and footwork and all of those skills on our own or spread out, three with a dribbling circuit going on. But we are not going to have a defender in front of us. On the football field, we are not playing 7-on-7. And we're not doing one-on-one drills with the wide receivers and defensive backs during this time. Okay? There will be no defending or competitive nature in what we do. And certainly that's to, again, try to cut down on bodily contact and such at this time and a lack of ability to distance. Still, locker rooms are closed and the same as it was that we discussed from the second quarter. Fourth quarter, what we are anticipating by July 27th, the date hasn't changed. And just so you know, we how do you come about the 27th? It just historically for us in the district has been whatever the FHSAA athletic calendar says the start date is, that's pretty much our fall start date. I know that I will mention, I know band has generally operated before that time. I don't know that today that we get into the full discussion about how all of that will play out, but I do want you to realize that has been historically the one thing that's probably taken place before that FHSAA start date. So that could be something, but at the same time, folks, this date could change easily. I mean, I could see it getting pitched back. I'm not saying maybe drastically at this point. It looks positive, but easily a week or 2 weeks, I could easily see that taking place. Because keep in mind, one of the most important parts of what we do from educational athletics is provide that experience through the FHSAA, let's say, statewide. And I know certainly we've got 3 counties for sure that are quite a bit behind. And they are large. They have lots of students. They have lots of teams, lots of activities. That's going to play into the thought process of, I'm sure, July 27th as it all plays out, because I don't think that anyone in Florida is going to want to exclude 3 of the larger counties from being able to participate. So just keeping that in mind. But at that point, the only way I can see us operating, as I mentioned here, is pretty much keeping the ideas of our sanitization, cleaning, our hand cleaning with the students still, making all of that the new norm. But we're going to have to be able to have contact. We're going to have to use locker rooms because we're going to begin, if we start practices, we're going to have football equipment, we're going to have basketball equipment and volleyball equipment and so on. So at that point, the assumption is that there will begin to be some differences in when social distancing is required, how it's required, or expected, rather. And that's it.
Well, you guys have done a great job. This is very well thought out, and I'm really comfortable with what you've done.
Thank you. Thank you. Again, please understand that this is not me. I'm standing here in front of you. That's it. I'm delivering a message from a lot of other folks.
The emotional well-being of our kids that you are taking into consideration, I say kudos to that. It's not just their physical well-being, but their emotional well-being too, so thank you.
Well, that's,
Okay. Have we
Dr.
thought
Mayer
about-
she's very concerned as well, so I don't want to overlook that.
Have we thought about temperature checks?
We did.
I know, I'm consult with hospice, and when I go into the hospice building now, we can only go in one way. And they have a thermometer that doesn't even touch you. It's like a laser, and I get my temperature checked every single time I walk in that door, and it never touches me. It aims right at my head. And I just wonder if that might just be a good safeguard, and I have no idea what they cost, but that just might be that extra little safeguard that we want to look at.
Most places are using those right now. When I went to City Hall the other day, they
They
did the
use
same
it,
thing.
yeah.
I did talk to Mr. Phillips about that, and Dr. Grantham as well about that. So, but I'll let Mr. Phillips fill you in on that one, our discussion.
Okay.
Yeah, I just.
I am, at this point, I'm comfortable with asking you to just allow us to have a screening form. We are asking the students, there's a set of questions that it's brief, it's 7 questions, and they will complete it, sign it, give it to us. In there's a little disclaimer that it's very brief, that just simply says, if the answers to these questions change, I will immediately notify my coach or sponsor of the changes. And, at that point, if they're symptomatic, if anything, we will assess it and contact the correct people. My concern with the temperature, numerous, but to be brief and specific, I don't know that we can do it effectively. I don't know that we have the manpower, and I'm just being frank with you. We're asking coaches to do a lot. And they are going to keep the kids safe. They will. They will pay attention to this, I'm telling you, because we've had some discussions that, and I didn't mention this, but it is in the school-based document that says if you do not follow these guidelines, that your program will be open to be suspended. So, and that's, yes.
So we want the coaches to know that, but we want the parents as well to know that if you knowingly send that kid out there and it causes the team to be put in harm's way, you're not doing anybody any good, and you could put them in jeopardy of being suspended. So Mr. Phillips did a great job. He and I have been talking about this for a while, and the plan I think is a solid plan. It's not going. No plan is going to be airtight, but I think this is the best plan for our district moving forward to get these kids back into the place. And he did. The thing that I liked about the plan the most is that it wasn't just a sports center. There was an academic component to it. There's a mental health component in this as well. So we're trying to deal holistically with our kids and making sure that they're taken care of. So thank you.
And Mr. Cummins,
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Stacy.
I'd like to make one comment. There have been the majority of children they're finding out don't even have a fever when they have this. So to test the temperatures and have the coaches go through all of that would really be just futile, because children with this virus, 7.2% of the children, school-age children in the state of Florida that have been tested for antibodies are testing positive for antibodies, and the majority of them, the parents never even know when they had it. So I agree with the coach that to have the coaches go through extra work just for an exercise is not even practical or makes no sense, since most of them aren't running a fever with this anyway.
Thank you, Ms. Stacy.
And I like the plan as well. It's clean and it's clear, and what I love about it the most is it's building good habits for life. And making that connection always for our kids is really important when it comes to their health, for sure. And the only other thing I'm thinking of is that now that they've opened up testing to pretty much anyone, it definitely would be worth it to encourage kids, parents to get their kids tested, especially to find for their own peace of mind and to find out if they have the antibody. So that would be on their own time, obviously, and I don't think there's an expense, but it would possibly provide peace of mind.
The only thing with that one, it kind of may flow into HIPAA. I'm thinking it could flow that way. And that's just something we would have to be concerned about.
Or they may not have it now, but they may get it tomorrow. So it could.
I was thinking more about the antibody part of it.
Right.
Right.
Anyway,
Right.
I know when I got tested, it gave me peace of mind. Maybe it wasn't
Me too.
only just for one day, but at least for that day, I knew I was healthy, and that was reassuring. It's
Yeah, I get you, Ms. Storer, because when I took my test, I was like, well, I'm good. But then I thought about it, I was like, I was good the day that I took the test. Yeah. So, thank you, Mr. Phillips.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So would you stay while Mr. McGowan and Mr. Ellers come in? And yes, so Mr. McGowan and Mr. Ellers are going to come in and go a little bit more in depth on the mental health component that Mr. Phillips mentioned in his presentation, as well as some other factors that we want to inform you about.
Morning.
Morning.
Reverend Cummings, Superintendent, Board members, Attorney Green, Mrs. Prestopino. Thank you for having us this morning. Dr. Mayer and Reverend Cummings asked us to come and provide some information this morning in regards to our district's procedures for suicide awareness and prevention. And so Mr. Ellers and I, that kind of falls under both of our areas, and so we're going to kind of run through what that looks like for you. Really, it kind of goes into three tiers or areas. One is prevention and education, intervention, if a situation arises, and then post-prevention or follow-up to ensure services are in place for students. On the prevention awareness side, it's certainly developed more since the Marjory Stoneman Douglas Act has come about. As you know, that's a mental health component and a school safety component, so that's definitely put some requirements in place that has helped on that prevention and education piece. But what I want you to know is that we've had in our district, I would say for decades, a suicide threat assessment process. So if there's a child in need or shows signs and symptoms of that, then we can intervene. There was some type of prevention and education more at the school level, so what the counselors put into place, what's taught through our PE courses that are mandated through those avenues. But since the Marjory Stoneman Douglas Act, as you know, I've told the board numerous times at this point, the Youth Mental Health First Aid, which is that 6-hour requirement training for all of our employees, that is a heavy component of that training for our adults, for our employees, so they'll know signs and symptoms, what to look for. And on our student end that we've talked also about is the new 5-hour education requirement that we just started this school year in 1920. And that has a large component of the signs and symptoms, and that's more geared for our students. Both of those kind of conclude with basically finding an adult on campus. That's the most important message for our students, is that if it's them or a peer of theirs, that they reach out to an adult, and then services can be provided. So that's kind of our big push right now with the prevention side is just teaching those signs and symptoms, and that's kind of our two main avenues right now. There's other things that are going on at individual school levels, but as far as district-wide, those two programs that are due to the new law, that's kind of where we're pushing that information out. So the next piece is the intervention piece, where when we know of a student, we kind of intervene. And again, we've kind of paralleled that with our MDT procedures for threat. So Mr. Ellers will cover that piece. Good morning. Our MDT teams are crucial to this problem-solving piece with a student. So if a student is reported as having some type of suicidal ideation, they've made a statement, talked to a friend, once we are aware of that, it's mandatory that any Marion County employee report that immediately to their supervisor and to the guidance department is usually where that's triggered in. The MDT team then meets together. We grab as many mental health parts of that MDT team as we can, and we sit the student down and talk to that child about the statements they've made. We have a protocol with some research-based questions we walk through about, what was the type of statement you made? Are you upset about things? There's a very specific list of questions we ask, and that allows us to tier whether a student is low, medium, or high risk for suicide.
If we feel a student is drifting into medium and high risk, we have community resources we can tap into immediately. The mobile response team from the centers we can call. We activate our sheriff's deputy into that conversation at that point. And the MDT team as a whole makes a determination how to best serve this child. If they're at crisis, we work through the MERT team, and generally that will result in a Baker Act, so that child can get support and services from a high level of mental health professionals. And basically after that, we make sure we document on the intervention piece everything we've done through that process. So that way we do not lose track of the student. And really the third part is a follow-up, regardless of how this student is treated or handled as far as his severity of the suicidal threat, we still need to follow up with that student. The follow-up piece is really tiered based on the need of that student. So if a student made a low-level type of statement, we're going to get that child some school-based counseling more than likely. It could be guidance counselors, could be our social workers. Our social workers have been working tirelessly with kids all through this COVID process as well as before, in small groups, individually, in situations like this. However, we are not equipped to handle severe mental health issues, and that's part of the whole seamless process of this. Our MDT team has a referral process to the centers and to community-based organizations that can help that child. And we actually have regular calls, a continuum of services meeting with them on a monthly basis, where law enforcement, juvenile justice, the centers, other mental health providers in the area all call in and meet together to talk about making sure we're providing a good continuum of services to our students.
Question. Where do the parents and/or caregivers fit into this process?
We try to be very open with parents during this whole process. Suicides are a very tricky piece, because some of that is going to be driven very much by the discussions had. Because keep in mind, a student that's suicidal is suicidal for a reason. And in some cases, not all, but in some, that child may be suffering from some sort of an abuse in the home or some other situation. So we have to be very nimble, and I can't tell you just very particular procedures, because every child's case is different. In many cases, if we're Baker acting a child, that is a law enforcement decision. We notify them, but not before that decision is necessarily made. Because again, that gets into a law enforcement decision on when they do that. But we do try to consult with parents whenever we possibly can, because the parents are part of this solution. And understand, when we get to a Baker Act situation, that's a law enforcement decision, along with the information they're getting from our multidisciplinary team. One of the best resources we've got out there now is the mobile response team, because now we have other mental health professionals that are coming into the discussion with the deputy, with our multidisciplinary team, making decisions about those placements.
So I think the biggest change over the years is the follow-up piece. And I can tell you just personally, I was a high school counselor, and when we would refer students to the centers for a suicide threat, the parent or guardian would take the child to the centers, they would evaluate them, and then they would come back. My own personal practice was obviously to meet with that child when they returned, to check in on them. But if it was a low-level risk or depending on the situation, sometimes that was it. The follow-up now is so much more thorough, which I think is the takeaway from everything that's put in place with MDT. Before, I myself alone was making the decision, obviously in consultation with my principal, to send the child to the centers. Now it is a group decision. So it takes the onus off any one person. It brings as many people to the table as possible to make that decision. But then what the outcome and the follow-up is through our MDT process. It's documented. That team is meeting on usually a 2-time-a-month basis for constant follow-up. So do they need outside counseling? It's something we can handle internal. those conversations are continuing. It's not a 5-minute conversation and then it's over. It's an ongoing thing until we know, okay, this child is now stabilized and they're no longer in need of anything. But it's a more thorough process on the back end, which I think is most important. And I think at the end of the day, I think after the Marjorie Stoneman Act, it forced all districts to go more concrete in their plans, which we've certainly done. I mean, we've said this before, our opinion obviously, but I feel that we have one of the best, processes in place of around the state. But at the end of the day, the best procedures are great, but it comes down to relationships and the rapport and the relationships that the adults on campus have with kids. And I think that's the biggest thing that's related through our trainings is that we even have in our trainings for students, write down one adult you can talk to so that they know that's the first line of defense is just talking to someone. So anyway, that's kind of a brief overview of kind of what we have in place.
And thank you so much for sharing those details, because under the old system, so many kids came back low risk and then just languished. And now there's a really comprehensive approach, and the difference is amazing for kids. So thank you for what you're doing.
Can you share the numbers for mental health training, just from last year?
I'm trying to think. So I want to say around 7,000 employees, and I believe this school year we were up to 1,400. So I don't know what percentage that is. Of course, with COVID-19, that certainly set us back for 2 months. We were unable to train. We actually started back yesterday with virtual training that we're going through with our teachers through next Monday. We'll do virtual trainings the rest of June, and then we're hopeful back face-to-face in July. But I would say total probably 1,600 as of right now. So it was about 25-30%.
And what about our students? We chatted a little bit yesterday about that, and the student, when we do it on the half days for our kids.
So, and we've referenced that before, so that is that's actually an instructional requirement separate from the mental health plan, but just like we're required to teach on certain subjects, mental health is now a requirement, and it's a minimum of 5 hours for secondary, so all 6th through 12th grade students. So we did that over 2 half days using EverFi curriculum, and it was very good. It's very well done. It's a fine line of educating versus taking it over that line with adolescents. It's a fine line there, but that curriculum did a great job. We're certainly going to improve on that process next year. We're kind of, had some late timing, unfortunately, put on us, but that is a new requirement for students, is that 5 hours. So that's a true directly to student, outlook of all mental health, and we also cover substance abuse and use. Human trafficking is another component of that. So it's really kind of a broad spectrum, but that is new this year for our students.
Mr. McGowan, Mr. Ehlers, and Mr. Phillips, thank you for that. I specifically kind of asked those questions with Dr. Mayer yesterday, and I know me and Jody talked about that yesterday as well. One, because you're putting things in place to close the cracks that kids often slip through with this mental health issue, and then with kids being out for so long, they've been out for so long, we don't know the mental status of what this has done to these kids, and we've had several suicides lately in our district. So.
One thing I did want to share related to that, Reverend Cummings, is we are going to be doing ongoing mental health counseling over the summer. Through our mental health grant, we have, I think, 12 social workers and all of our psychologists that are going to be serving students in small groups and individually as needed throughout the summer. So we're going to try to provide a continuum of service right up to when we get to see our children back in their seats and face-to-face.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Ayers has some updates for you.
Good morning. Good morning, Pastor Chair, Madam Co-Chair, board members, Ms. Green, Dr. Mayor, Nicole. I'm here today to talk about Francis Marion Military Academy Charter. This was promoted or prompted by, there's material that's at the former Francis Marion facility that needs to revert back to the Marion County Public School System, but it can't do that as long as the Francis Marion Charter is in existence. You have a manila envelope that's in your packet that has some information, and I want to go over it real quick to go over a timeline of information of stuff where we are. On December 17th, Marion County Public Schools received notification from Mr. Mendez notifying the district that the Board of Trustees held a meeting on December 10th, and it was decided that the doors would close on December 16th, and all teaching staff would be terminated. There's an attachment of that letter that we received. Then on December 19th, notice was received from Mr. Gibbs's office via fax, notifying the school district that the letter dated December 17th concerning the dissolution of the FMMA charter was not in compliance with state statute. Minutes of an FMMA governing board meeting was held on December 19th, or 2020, were also included, and at that meeting it stated that they were not going to close and that Mr. Nick Nevada was now appointed the new chairman. On January 24th, Mr. Nevada stopped by the finance department to pick up checks for ROTC, the best and brightest, and school recognition dollars. Those checks totaled $37,664. Again, on February 28th, Mr. Nevada stopped by finance department and picked up a check for ROTC, the total of $6,046. Since then, there's really been no communication from the F. Francis Marion Military Academy Board or from Mr. Nevada, the current chairman, concerning the future of the FMMA charter. We have not received any board minutes. Their website is no longer available. Therefore, we're not even certain whether the board still exists. Multiple of attempts have been made by the MCPS Finance Department to contact Mr. Nevada requesting the required monthly financials. The Finance Department has received invoices and forwarded those on to Francis Marion Military Academy, but really has had no contact as to whether those invoices have been paid. On April 2nd, the Finance Department received a memo or a letter from the Auditor General Office stating that Francis Marion had not turned in their 1819 audit, which is required by statute. Alice Posada has now let me know that that has now been turned in, so they did turn that in. The Marion County Public School Finance Department did receive an email from Mr. Mendez, who is no longer the chairman, giving some sort of financial statements for January, February, March, and April. But it also shows a deficit of $23,000. And after driving by on May 29th, I noticed that the sign was down at the former facility and there were construction dumpsters in front of the facility. That's the current timeline that we've received notification with documents. The next piece of paper is under the clip. Our options and next steps. The Marion County School Board, as the sponsor of the Francis Marion Military Academy Charter, cannot legally take possession of any property, furnishings, or equipment purchased with public funds as long as the FMA Charter exists. So we don't have a final inventory, we cannot take possession of any of those items. Francis Marion is in direct violation of their charter contract. In paragraph 24, general provisions, it states that the sponsor may terminate the charter if good cause is shown. Good cause is shown by not operating a school and failure to meet generally accepted standards of fiscal management. I've attached copies of the charter contract of those sections. Charter termination options. The FMMA charter can be terminated by its governing board through voluntary closure. Mr. Mendez attempted to do that on December 12th by notifying us by that letter. But then the board, their governing board, rescinded that when they appointed Mr. Nevada as the chairman of their board and spokesman. But we've heard no other, I don't even know if the board has met since then. I have statute in here that talks about how the governing board can voluntarily close. Option 2, according to state statute, the Marion County School Board can terminate the charter for good cause. Good cause is shown by not operating as a school and failure to meet generally accepted standards of fiscal management. And I've attached the statutes in regards to that. It says this process requires us to notice the charter's governing board at least 90 days before our intent to close them or terminate the charter. The governing board may request a hearing within 14 days of that notice in front of an administrative law judge if they require. That would make the termination date September 2nd, 2020, if we notice them tomorrow about that. The board does have an option by statute to close them immediately, but that's only if serious danger to the health, safety, and welfare of the students exists. And that doesn't happen because there are no students for that to exist. So I'm here now for direction.
Thank you, Mr. Ayers. We know everything. We know the history of Francis Marion and what happened and all that stuff. We dealt with that extensively towards the end of the year and the beginning of this school term, this beginning of this year, 2020. So I'm in agreement that we do need to start the process to get the charter, because there is, I'm sure there's things over there that we're supposed to get, but we don't know if it's even there anymore, if their construction ends there. So we need to do what we need to do in accordance to the contract and in accordance to law to remove that charter. They can reapply if they ever get restructured again, but that's up to them.
One thing that, I want to try to protect the Francis Marion Charter School's legacy that they did some great things with students in this county. And the way this is ending here with this charter, there's still reports that have to be turned in. There's still education reports that have to be turned in that they can't provide because they don't have that existence. So my hope is that if we can get in contact with Mr. Nevada or the board, that they will voluntarily terminate their charter. They can stay in existence as a board or as a nonprofit organization, and if they want to reorganize and possibly reopen again, they can do that, submit a new application, and if they submit a new application, that will provide them the opportunity to apply for the Restart grant to restart. If they maintain as a charter with an attempt to say, hey, we're going to reorganize and try to reopen, they're not eligible for that restart, for the opening charter school grant.
And I would hope they would. I think we need to go with our process, but I will hope, and they're hearing this, I'm hoping somebody's hearing this, that they would just come in and go ahead and do the rescind it, and we move forward and not have to go through that lengthy process of going all the way to September. That way they can work on whatever they're going to do as far as reorganizing, whatever. But and it maintains great rapport with us as a board if they do it that way. So, Ms. McCollum.
I agree 100%. I mean, I think, especially since we haven't heard from them, apparently some bills may not be getting paid, and I think that we need to kind of wash our hands of it, and we've tried to take care of their students, and I think we've done everything in good faith, and so now we need to rescind their charter.
And also, too, there's school board materials that over in that building that we haven't had a chance to access, right? Computers and.
We haven't. I have not received a final inventory of anything that's over there. So quite honestly, not even sure what is there. But by statute, anything that was bought with public funds needs to revert back to the district. And our existing charter schools have first opportunity to be able to do that. And so I've had multiple requests from the other charter schools. Hey, can we? But I can't do anything with that.
Yeah.
Ms. King.
I agree with wanting to protect their legacy. I think at this point it would make sense to move forward with that. Maybe Mr. Ayers, if you could maybe reach out to Mr. Nevada, can you try? Or I saw Alice, I just didn't know.
He sent an email to Mr. Nevada and copied me in it earlier this. That was last week, and I didn't get.
No, we got a response back from Mr. Mendez, who's no longer the chair, according to their board, saying, hey, we've done all that. And I responded back to him, no, sir, you haven't. This is still the process that needs to happen. What I would like, with the board permission, to do is to go ahead and send a letter to formalize the process, notifying of the board's intent to terminate the charter. There is statutory regulation that we have to follow for that, and it's a 90-day process. My hope is once the receipt of that letter, they notify that, they will meet, because they have to meet in a meeting that's noticed in a regular board meeting to do that, and then they can self-terminate, and then that process stops.
That's what I'm hoping too, that they'll self-terminate because we've initiated this process. So.
So that we can all move forward, and that's what's best for kids.
Yeah.
Ms. Stacy, are you listening?
Yes, I'm here.
Any comments?
I think we need to move forward
Okay. You got it,
and
Ms.
do what we
Ayers.
need to
Right.
do.
So just so that I
I
understand,
think we need to.
sorry, Ms.
I
Stacy.
think we need to get the students' records, and we need to get, anything that might be there that would help another charter school. There's no sense in the building, when the building's closing, for the owners of the building to come in there and throw stuff out or auction or whatever. We need to go ahead and get it all taken care of. I highly recommend, and I hope that you'll put in the letter, if it's statutorily okay, that the board members all unanimously agree that it is time that we go ahead and get this off the burner so we can take care of big issues in the district, and encourage the board of directors to do what's right by everybody, because we have stood with the school for years. We've helped it for years. It's really helped a lot of students too. A lot of students have benefited by our efforts to keep it open, but it's obviously not open now, and it is time to close it.
Thank you, Ms. Stacy. You got it, Mr. Ayers.
All right, so just to reiterate, I'm going to go ahead and draft a
Start the
letter,
letter.
and I would like to put that, notice that tomorrow, and I'll let you see and Dr. Mayer see the letter before we send it, to let them know that this process has started, and then I will continue to attempt to have conversations with, any of the board members to say, hey, let's work through this process. And again, like I said before, let's protect the legacy of Francis Marion, and if they want to reapply, they can, and if they reapply with the new board, they can get the new grant money from the state to start a new charter.
Do you think, has that been explained to them? Do you think they understand that? So maybe.
I would love to be able to
hopefully-
explain that with them if I could have
Yeah,
communication
so
with them.
hopefully they're paying attention to this.
Yes.
They can reach out to you and you can explain that. I think that would help. I hope.
Thank you, Mr. Ayers.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Christian has a brief update, and then Dr. Grantham has an update, and then we'll be done with administrative briefing.
We need 5 minutes, 5-minute recess before you come back, Mr. Christian. So we're going to recess right now at
We're gonna take a little break.
10:34. We'll be right back at 10:40. 10:41. We're going to continue with our work session. Dr. Mayor, this Kevin, Mr. Christian is up.
Good morning again to each of you. Thank you for taking time to address this concern. It regards the strategic plan that has been underway for a long time. You guys approved the content of it back in November. We've been in the design phase. And Teresa Boston Ellis, in my time with the district, has taught me to pay for projects from where they originate. For instance, when we deal with school choice flyers or logos or whatever, the school choice department pays for that. When we deal with homeless and needy student materials or the what used to be called Stuff the Bus, when we deal with that campaign, that department pays for those materials. I coordinate them with a graphics artist that we contract with from outside the district. So the strategic plan is the same way. I do have money in my budget to cover the cost of the design of it, but it at least is my understanding that it originated with the school board, and it is the school board strategic plan. So I just need direction on whether my budget pays for that or the school board budget pays for that. We're talking, the quote is for $1,500. That's for 20 hours of design time, and we're just about at the 15-hour mark in terms of design time. So just need some direction.
Does the school board have budgeted money for that?
I don't know the answer to that question.
We do.
The school board doesn't have a budget.
I don't think we have a budget, so it's good.
Okay, then I'll cover it out of my PR budget.
We can check with Teresa, but I don't think we have any kind of a budget to cover anything like that.
I think sometimes.
Right.
We would have to
Okay.
move it.
We have to do a funds transfer or something.
I believe we would have to do that or get it approved somehow. But I think we would have to ask Teresa how
Is Teresa here?
is.
I'm sure she could talk.
I hate for it to come out of Kevin's budget, but I don't know how we pay for it.
Well, that's why we have Teresa. She's
Yeah.
pretty intelligent. She will put us on the correct track, I'm sure.
And we want it to be straightforward and professional, but at the same time, with an eye to cost, everything we should be sharpening our pencil on
Absolutely.
always, so.
Well, I think by you bringing it to us this way, you're showing the true transparency of this transaction, because this is something that we need to get done, and we've been.
We need to get it done.
It is.
It needs to be up where it's
Where people can see
user-friendly
it.
for our community to see.
And it's almost time to update it again
Right.
at the end of this school year, so.
Right.
I don't know if you heard a while ago. I
Yes,
threw
I
your
heard
name
my
into the
name.
mix.
Yes, I heard my name.
Ms. Boston Ellis has taught me that when there's a project that I help coordinate or create for another department, that typically charges associated with that project would come out of that department budget versus the PR budget, but they may have some questions for you.
So, Ms. Boston Ellis, how can we do this without it coming out of Kevin's budget?
You certainly do have a budget. We would have to do an amendment, and if there is not enough money inside of the board's budget, then we would take it from fund balance.
So the board does have
You
it?
have a budget. I don't know, Nicole, if there's anything. Okay. So there's nothing available in the board's budget? No, period. So we can do transferring.
Well, we didn't do any, the conferences were canceled, so
Correct.
some of the things that we were supposed to go to didn't happen, so maybe we can take the funds that we were going to use for that and just making a budget amendment
Right.
for this so that it
We
doesn't
can
come out of-
transfer funds to cover that from another object,
Yeah.
So,
or if there is a need, we'll take it from fund balance.
I know we're not going to our summer conference, and we didn't go to the one at only Howard Hill, so there should be some funds there, if that's what our budget is for, that we can move over to you, so it won't come out your budget, Captain. Okay.
I've trained him well.
Hello?
Stacy, I hear Miss Stacy.
Thank you.
Miss Boston Ellis, I think Miss Stacy has a question.
Go ahead, Ms.
I
Stacy.
heard the word fund balance. If there's money in Mr. Christian's budget, then this is definitely, something that has to do with the computer system and the websites and everything. And I don't know. I don't see a problem with taking from that budget if the school board doesn't have a budget for it. Taking from that budget, and at the end of the year, then if Mr. Christian's budget is short, something that he wants to do, he could bring it back to us and then take that from fund balance.
We got it, Ms.
But I don't want
Stacy.
to see anything come from fund balance.
We got it, Ms. Stacy. We got it.
Okay.
We got it. Thank you, Mr. Christian. Dr. Mayor, is that it?
Dr. Grantham's the last.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Good morning, Board. I have 3 items I just kind of need your help with. We have been talking as a union, so I do want to thank Mark from MEA and Diane from IUPAT and Melissa from MESP. We have conversations regularly, and we text and go back and forth. So there's 3 things I need your kind of support with as we wrap up the school year. We work with the teachers union on when teachers can come and get their stuff out of their classrooms. And if you've been a teacher, you know normally if you transfer to another school, you ask your husband or you ask your wife or you ask your children to come help you get your stuff and take home or even take to the new site. We've said no to that, but I think we're in a place where we want to allow that. We know there's someone waiting on their husband to help. So what we've kind of worked out, and we just want to make sure you're good with it, is Friday, June 5th, and Monday, June 8th are the last day of teacher contracts. So June 8th is the last teacher contract day. We want to allow families to come help the teacher get their stuff out of their classrooms. We're not talking about inviting 20 other, we're talking about your immediate folks. If you have children come help you because they haven't let students on campus, allowing those families to come help their mom or their dad get their stuff out of their classrooms and move it. So we wanted to do tomorrow and Monday to allow teachers to get their stuff.
Yeah.
Okay with that?
Y'all good with that, Avery? Miss Avery? I mean,
Yeah.
that's yeah.
Complies with phase 2, which I believe starts.
Right, we just want to be on the same page, didn't want to do it without you knowing about it. And we have a meeting with principals, and we're going to send something out this afternoon after we go with everything. The second piece is July 6th. July 6th, we're asking for people to come back to their work site. So that would be the hybrid model, is because after what the governor said, we want July 6th, is that week of the 4th of July, and then you come back on that Monday, July 6th. So, for example, IPCs would come back to work unless they cannot, and they can do FMLA. So we've done the hybrid. You can work either or, but what we're asking is July 6th. And the reason why we're asking for that is people said, are we coming back? Are we coming back? I need to know so I can get childcare. I need to make arrangements. This gives them plenty of time to make arrangements. July 6th we thought was a fair date, so we just kind of want to get consensus on that if you're good with that.
Yep. Good with that.
Okay, the last thing is grading. That's been we need to get that done. So I'm going to go through this and I promised you I would bring you some data, and I'm bringing you data. If we keep grades like they are, so 3rd and 9 weeks grades are done. We're not messing with that. Everybody was in school that Friday, spring break, those are done. We're talking about the last 9 weeks, the last quarter of grades. So if we do not do anything with grades, here's a number. This is real data for you. 19,247 students. 19,247 out of 36,606. 19,247 out of 36,606 students. That's students, that's not subjects. Their grades would have went down. That's 53% of our student population. Their grades would have went down. That is not someone that has 6 subjects. That could be all 6 have gone down. That is just pure students. So if we keep the current grades that we have for 4th quarter, 53% of our students would have gone down. So this is our suggestion. We didn't want the teachers to have to go redo grades. We didn't want to have the administrators, because imagine Westport and Forest, how long that would take. I do want to give a gentleman a ton of credit. Alex Cole is brilliant. He's developed, and something with MIS where he has to hit a button, he's created this. It will choose, if you did poorly 4th quarter, you get your 3rd 9 weeks grade. So I'm going to give an example. Math. I made an A in math 3rd 9 weeks, but now I made a C 4th 9 weeks. I get the A for the 4th 9 weeks. If I performed the same, and it's an A, and if it goes down is what the conversation is. However, if I made a C 3rd 9 weeks, but I made an A 4th 9 weeks, I get the A. So
higher grade.
To benefit the student, they get the higher grade. So example again, if I made an A and a C for 4th 9 weeks, I get the A. If I made a C and an A, 4th 9 weeks I did better, I get the A. That is a student-centered, and it is not on the backs of teachers, and it's not on the back of administrators. It is someone that's very brilliant, I'll say his name again, Alex Cole, developed this logarithm or MIS to hit a button to benefit the child. And that has not been done. That is a conversation we've promised to have. We didn't want to do what we talked about for grade. Had we had this conversation before students were done, you know what students would have done. I made an A 39 weeks.
I'm done.
I'm done. Right? My son would have done that, I know without a doubt. So this is to benefit children, and we think it's the best thing to do. We wanted to get your input before we did anything.
Thank you, Dr. Grantham, for clearing that up, because a lot of people kept saying, you guys have not said anything about grades. You got, as educators, parents, we did not want exactly what you said. If we just said it's going by the highest grade, we know what most kids would have, they'd have been on summer break before Monday. And so I like the algorithm.
Let me give you a specific example. There was a student at Westport High School that was in AP classes in front of a teacher, had an A. Same student not having that teacher, taking AP classes, has a D. Student didn't change. The way I taught face-to-face changed. And I'll be honest with you, it's been difficult, and I think we all know that.
And we have no idea what are going on in our students' lives right now. We don't have that. You know, Zoom is wonderful, but it is not face-to-face interaction. I mean, you cannot judge body language in Zoom. You cannot, there's just, and I commend you. I really like Alex Cole. I like what he did there, and I think I've been concerned about this, with the equity issue. And so I think, I know that we have students who just chose not to do their work. I know that. We all know that. But I really think that this is the most equitable way to help most of our kids, because we don't know what went on inside those homes.
And Ms. McCall, I want to say that we research other districts and several.
And are they
districts,
doing
same
thing? Okay.
Same thing. And we went back and forth. This is a student-centered. We got to take care of our kids right now.
Well, we were 3/4 the way through the year, and that's how I like to look at it. So, rather than just looking at that fourth quarter grade. So I think it's.
But I don't want to discount the student that busted it and got the
exactly.
A.
Exactly.
They did. If you did better,
you should get credit.
Get
for
your
that.
grade. Yes, ma'am.
The
And
only
you
thing
can
you're-
pick holes all in it. There's all kinds of ways.
And
to
there
do it.
are pitfalls,
Yeah, right.
because you're going to hear the
Always.
teacher say, like, I'm not sure my student did that work, it was a parent.
Right.
So if they're receiving an A for a grade they didn't this quarter, I could see that being concerned. But at the same time, I do understand that we've had a difficult year, and we could address this now, but with the understanding that next year, that regardless of that I don't think they'll be given.
Get what you get.
They're right. There's going to be a good purposeful plan coming in, and there'll be a way to make sure that the students are earning the grade, whatever. And,
Yeah.
but it's just been tricky, but I agree.
It's been
that
really
this
hard.
is-
There's no way to.
Yeah, it's just.
Well, and right, there are so many variables to this that we have to come from grace and compassion. My prayer is that we won't be faced with something like this again anytime soon. Kids that slacked, hear me. It's going to come back and bite you.
It will. It will.
It will come back and bite you. I can guarantee you that. So maybe people get away with something in the short term, but that doesn't mean they're going to get away with it in the long term. And hopefully that's a very small section. We have to be concerned about trying to do all we can to support and heal this community and get everybody back on the best footing possible to go forward. So.
Can I say something?
Go ahead, Ms. Stacy, your turn.
Okay. I agree. Honestly, at least at the elementary level, by the end of March, they've got most of what they need for FSA, because everyone's preparing hard for FSA that's coming up around the corner. So what they were showing at that time when this all started, they pretty much got the year behind them because they're about to do year-end tests. And that last part that we were on, that we were online learning, the teachers had done a good job, at least at elementary, because the elementary students have to be prepared for those tests, and plus the year-end test. They were getting pretty well ready to take their state test, so most of their knowledge for the year, I believe they already had been taught by the teachers, and they were just getting prepared for testing at the end. So I say yes, go with the best grade.
We're good.
Okay, so we'll have a Zoom meeting this afternoon. It will be effective right away, and it's not perfect, but I think it's the best we can do for our students.
So our teachers and principals won't have to go back in. This algorithm that
Alex
he's
Cole
done,
figured
that
it out.
Alex figured out, they just have, that's amazing.
That's, yeah.
Technology to give you.
Is he in the technology department or is he at school? He's in our technology.
He's not retiring, is he?
No, we hope not. Lord knows. No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks, sir.
And I would like to talk to Dr. Grantham about something else too, when I get a chance.
Thank you.
I think she wants you to call her.
Let me call you, Miss Stacy.
Okay, no, I want to talk to you right now.
Okay.
Okay, you went real briefly over the staying with the schedule. I'm having a hard time hearing. I'm really having to strain to hear.
Okay.
There's some static in the background and stuff. And you were talking about the hybrid and people not going back to work until whatever, and that it was the state's recommendation. I remember Dr. Mayer recommending like maybe a few weeks ago, recommending that everyone come back, and if they couldn't, they could take their 10-day FMLA, because we've got so many people that are having to work, and then we have so many that are at home, and I want a schedule that's good for everyone, and not a schedule that's made up to work better for some than others. So fill me in again on this hybrid schedule you're talking about.
No, ma'am. We're currently, Ms. Stacy, in the hybrid model, and what we're asking is to eliminate the hybrid model beginning on July 6th. So we go back to a normal way of work beginning July 6th. If you can't do that, you can apply for FMLA.
I thought Dr. Mayer wanted us to do that like a couple of weeks ago.
No, ma'am. We're still currently doing the hybrid. They can work from home, but we're saying we want that to be eliminated and come on July 6th.
Miss Stacy.
Okay, but
Miss Stacy, this is Heidi. So what we went to the last time we talked was still the hybrid model, but it was if you can't do your job in the hybrid, like
For the hourly employees.
Yes. So our teachers, they're going above and beyond as usual, but they can do it at their home. But our HVAC folks, they need to actually go to the HVAC unit to do it. They cannot be working from their home. So that's what we went to.
Okay, for those that are working in the schools, though, are they doing the 10-hour days now?
Next week, they begin 10-hour days, Ms. Stacy, next Monday.
So then they're off on Fridays.
Yes, ma'am. We'll do the 4-10s beginning Monday.
Okay, I know those 10-hour days are long, and I know why we do it. It just works good for everybody through the summer, and it all makes sense. But I've also talked to people that do the 10-hour days, and they're like early in the morning, like especially at the schools. There's not a lot going on at the school for those school employees to be doing it 7 o'clock in the morning or 6 o'clock at night. Parents aren't calling. However, these 10-hour days work out. And because so many of the schools, the principals, secretaries, cafeteria people, the different ones, whoever's in there working, the year-long people that are actually in the school site, they have been working throughout this, and we talked about doing something, for those people. Why don't we talk about they're on a 10-hour day, but they can do 8 hours and then be on call, so they're still working from home.
Right.
And because so many of these people have been working, the secretaries particularly, and the principals have been working throughout this. When so many employees are working from home, and you will not convince me they're working 10 straight hours on a day from home, because they can't work that many hours in a day at school hardly, because there's no children in the morning at the schools for these people that are on year-long contracts, and there's no parents calling them at 5 o'clock at night because the parents don't even know the schools are still open to talk to them, so they're just kind of there. So could we talk about those people that have been holding down these forts the entire time doing an 8-hour day. And then the other 2 hours in the day, they're more or less on call because they're on call anyway, and to take care of things, because I just don't think it's right that we have so many people that say, oh, I can do my work from home, okay? Even if they were at work that day, some of those hours, there's just not people calling in because nobody knows we're there. So I know they're not working 10 straight hours from home. Common sense tells me that. So the people in the schools, we've had that schedule for school people, and all through this whole thing when we've been doing the 10-hour days, they've always told me, well, you know, the morning's kind of dead, the afternoon's kind of dead, but we do it. It's because it kind of works for the employees to get that Friday off. We shut the schools down, give some cleaning time and everything. But can we look at those employees that are sitting there, and why make them sit there 10 hours when we know the people working from home are not sitting there just doing that 10 hours? Can we have a conversation about that for these people at these schools?
Yes, ma'am, we can. Are you suggesting, Ms. Stacy, you want a 5-day week, or you want an 8 and a 2 and the 4 10s?
No, no.
10 hours with two at home.
I want these people to have the 10-hour days, but it's accepted that. There's no sense in them sitting there 2 of those 10 hours doing nothing when all those people that are working from home are doing nothing those 2 hours, because you can't work 10 straight hours in a day. There's not that many phones. I'm not calling people that work from home. I'm not calling administrators in the summer from home at 6 o'clock, you know, like a curriculum person or something. They're doing their work from home, or 5 o'clock, at 6 o'clock, I guess. So why are we going to make the people just sit at the schools, these principals, just sit there, when you could loosely say that they're on 10-hour days, but if they can do if the principal can do 2 hours, like the 7 o'clock in the morning and the 6 o'clock at night hours, those hours, if they can do them from home, why are we making them sit there?
Miss Stacy.
Because I can tell you the 50% of the people that are working from home aren't doing it.
So, Miss Stacy, what I'm hearing from you is that we modify those people. What you're saying is you're trying to do something for the folk that have been here for this time. I don't have an issue. I don't have an issue with that. What you're saying is that let them do 8-hour days at work and 2 hours at home, or 2 hours of work at home. Guys, you have an issue with that?
So Reverend Cummings, I'll do, and we have these Zoom meetings this afternoon, is I'll say give them some flexibility, either
that's what she's asking
in
for,
the beginning
flexibility
or at the end, or 1 and 1 or 2 in the beginning. Yes, sir, we can do that.
You guys have any issue with that, board members? Okay.
Okay.
All right. We got you, Miss Stacy.
Thank you, Ms. Stacy.
Thank you.
Okay, I appreciate, because I know they're not having Zoom meetings at 6 o'clock, because those people that are working from home they're eating supper by then, and the people at the school shouldn't have to be sitting there for nothing.
So those employees will have the flexibility to be able to do 8 and 2 at home.
I think what we're trying to do is acknowledge the hard work and the extra hours that our employees put in constantly.
Right.
And how we can help with that.
And how they have stood up for the district during this situation. So we got it, Miss Stacy.
That does not mean, no, wait. The people that are working from home, if I call when I'm at 6 o'clock, when those people are working from home, I want to be able to talk to them. But these people in the schools that have been sitting there holding down the fort, where there's not even any school resource officer for protection or anything, I think we need to reward them. I'm talking cafeteria.
We got it, Miss Stacy. We got it.
All right. I want to make sure, because I'm not there to look at y'all's faces.
We got it. We got it. I promise you, it's there. Is that it, Dr. Mayor? Yes. Okay. For the sake of time, we're gonna do the agenda, but I'm asking those folk keep their presentations as brief as possible. And Ms. Gary.
I have a statement from Ms. Gary because the equity report has been pushed back. So she says the annual equity update outlines our district's strategies for ensuring equitable access. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the Department of Education has postponed the 2019-2020 annual equity update to October 23rd, 2020. This allows districts to focus on our local response to the crisis, and the board can expect to receive the report before that deadline.
Thank you. Ms. Lively, come on, Ms. Lively. Yeah.
I can't hear you. 23rd. 23rd. Thank you very much.
Sorry, I was in my head.
No, I appreciate it.
I need to pass the message on. We still have to do timesheets for the 10 hours, so people still have to work. So we're going to do timesheets like we've been doing from work. So there will be a 10-hour timesheet. We do have to do that for the 8 and the 2.
Okay. Ms. Lively, if you can be as brief as possible with these presentations, because we need to catch back up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just to recap, you recall we postponed this presentation till this week because there were some difficulties with the property placement and to get better terms and pricing. So Chip Few is here. He's going to go over all the numbers for you and let you know where we ended up. Can you hear me, Chip?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead when you're ready.
Okay. Good morning.
Does Ben
my name
have
is Ben.
can Ben share his screen?
Sure.
He needs to share the presentation.
There you go. You got it?
Yep.
All right. Good morning. My name is Ben Few. I'm the founder and the principal, one of the principal consultants at Ben Few and Company. We are an independent risk management firm that work for you. We don't sell insurance, and we're not affiliated with any brokers or companies. We strictly work for our clients. This year, we're in a tight market, to say the least. We had some last-minute calculations that brought the premium down quite a bit from the original renewal offer, and I'll go over that with you. I'm going to pass on this first slide. We've worked with you for quite a while. These are probably our main consulting engagements that we do for you. The market conditions are anything but happy. Before COVID even started, the property market was tightening due to all the hurricane losses and wildfires. So we've seen property renewals on large property values anywhere from 25% to 45% this year. We've actually had one that was lucky to get it renewed at 45. That's not the case with this risk this year. We're in pretty good shape. The casualty markets are tight as well, but not so much for self-insured operations, because you're doing most of the risk management work yourself, plus you have excess coverage instead of primary. You can do the next. This is a lot of information to show you, and you don't have to get too involved in it because I'm going to summarize it in the next two slides. But we're showing the property limit at $50 million. We're showing that pricing went up 21%. When we first got our renewal quote, it had gone up 47% for the same terms and conditions. And we were able to, through your broker, have that negotiated down to this 21%, which is one of the lowest increases that we've seen offered this year for large property. The casualty coverage, as you can see on the bottom, is less expensive than that. You're driven by property premium, but the increase is only about 7.8%, and we have had changes in our rating criteria. For instance, the property coverage, that's not a pure 21% increase because you had a $16 million increase in your values. We go to the next one. Now this brings it down to where we can talk. We're showing where the property is going up, and you can see where your casualty went up, not that much though. So the total increase this year over last year with an additional $16 million in property value is an 18% increase, and in real dollars, that's $315,184 in renewal premium. We consider this overall 18% increase a win. I know it's painful, but I've got another slide to show you to give you an idea of how much we've paid in the past and where we're headed. This is a very telling graph. You can see the gold line on top is the total premium, and you can see that the breakdown of those premiums below with the bar graph, the blue is the property. So our premiums are obviously driven by the property market, and you can see how we've been as high as nearly 2.4 million on just property back in the 13 and 14 years when we were in another tight market, and we've been as low as just over $1 million in the softer market. And now you can see that it's starting to ramp back up again. The smaller bars on this chart are your casualty program, or your liability, crime, cyber liability, and excess workers' comp. And as you can see, it's absolutely constant across the board for several years. And that is an indication of a mature self-insured program that works. So if we weren't in this and we were in one of the pools or a standalone carrier, we would be going with the upward trend on the, the casualty as well. So that's a pretty telling story of where we've been, where we're headed. And you can go to the next. The funding. We've done a real good job, the school district has done a real good job on this funding. We always use a 65% confidence level because we have enough premium in our fund to cover the things that we need to cover. In the past, we have had to fund it as much as $2 million for a couple of years. Last year, I believe it was just over $1 million, and we're dropping it down to we're only saying you have to refund it by $660,000 this year, and that is a direct relationship to the amount of claims paid under our self-insurance program and our risk management ability of your risk management department. So our recommendation is to indeed replenish our fund by $660,000 for this year. You can go to the next. This is a breakdown of the risk analysis that we perform every year. We're showing your total values at $1,061 million, which again is that increase of just under $17 million. We've done the probable maximum loss study again this year on a 250-year storm. That analysis shows that we could have a possible as high as $32 million in property losses, and we're covering the board with a $50 million policy. So we're well within our parameters of proper insurance, so we feel that in the event we had some sort of unbelievable catastrophe that exceeded $32 million, that we would still qualify for FEMA. On the casualty side, we will continue to transfer the insurance contractually to all the vendors as we do every year. We continue to analyze new programs that the district comes up with, such as drone use and the security options for the school. You do have a grantor's trust for the property and casualty coverage because it's self-insured. And when we go back to that funding that we were talking about, it protects the funding from another department taking money to cover another issue because it looks like a nice savings account. It's very important that that money stay there in the event we do have catastrophic losses, and that's why we have the grantor's trust, and it will renew this year as well. On that note, I know y'all are looking at the possibility of self-insurance on your health insurance, and should you go that direction, we would recommend another grantor's trust to protect that funding, so it's not rated if we need it in another area of the school's budget. The Guardian and law enforcement program has changed with the times. You currently have 6 guardians and 1 armed and official police officer, and we have them covered under our liability at very nominal cost. So this is working really well. We added active shooter coverage last year, and again, we'll continue with that coverage. And when we get to the future, that's where the COVID-19 could affect us. the rate increase that we've suffered this year was loss driven by storms and natural events. The COVID situation is really up in the air. There are lawsuits trying to force insurance companies to pay claims that were never intended to be paid. We have to see how that shakes out. We're seeing the government consider passing sovereign immunity for public entities and schools for the COVID issues under the liability. We'll have to see how that pans out. So really, we don't have an answer for what's going to happen next year because of COVID, but it will definitely figure into the tightness of the market. And again, I think this is good that we are self-insured because it does isolate us somewhat from the overall insurance industry. Our proposed action for the coming year is to go ahead and renew the coverages with the same terms and conditions as we had last year, which a lot of carriers are not offering anymore. I think it's a very good premium for it. Go ahead and replenish our loss fund, the $660 that we used during the year. We'll go ahead and monitor your certificates to make sure that we're transferring the liability properly so that it doesn't fall upon the school board. And we also monitor your own safety programs and risk management department. We will work with the actuaries to determine appropriate loss fund requirements. We do that all year, every year. And we also refine your statement of values, meaning new school buses, new construction, fine arts, etc., every year. And we work with your own risk and safety-related processes with your driver's program, drone use, loss control, and etc. And then we advise of any legislative change, which we're on top of, to see how that's going to affect our year next year. And I have raced through that as per your instructions, and I'm willing to take any questions you might have.
Mr. Chair, I have one question. When you talk about replenish the loss fund of $660,000, does that come out of a general fund? How do we replenish that, Lord?
That's a budgeted amount that we do every year, and we do have that in the budget, and it's just an accounting function of moving it into the risk management fund. Teresa could be more explicit on that.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
I think that's
Any other
it, Chip.
questions?
I think that's it. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
You can hang up.
Okay.
Thank you. And just to recap on the funding, on that page 7 in this presentation, the slide he talked about the loss fund, this is that parallel that we talked about with what would happen with the health insurance if you decide to move forward. You can see on that slide, back in 1988, when they started self-insuring the property casualty program, we've been funding ever since. Different amounts, as he said, there's been years it's been $2 million, now it's down to $660. We have an actuary that looks at our numbers twice a year, and based on their analysis, that's how we decide how much we need to fund to keep this right side up. And this whole concept of the self-insurance for the health will work exactly the same. Obviously, we're not going to fund at 65% because you don't know if you'll have a fire or a hurricane, but you do know you're going to have health claims, so we will fund according to the claim volume, but the concept's the same. We're accustomed to doing it, and it'll work just like this, and you will eventually, if you do this, see reports that come out like this that tells you how much the actuary determined that we need to fund and what that looks like, and then Teresa will manage that in the same way as well.
Thank you.
So it was a good correlation for the following conversation. Okay. We ready to move on to the health? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I know you want to be able to move on as quickly as possible. We can talk as much or little about this. We've been here several times. We've got a condensed presentation that's got a few pages that you probably just want to see as a recap, particularly as it pertains to the funding that we can talk about a little bit. And then today was slated for consensus so we can determine what we're moving forward with. And I'm going to let Thomas come up and talk about those slides.
Good morning, all.
Morning.
Thank you for having us again today. A quick summary report. We've covered these details extensively on the health insurance program, but we want to ensure any and all questions you've thought since are answered. Do we have that presentation available on Upload?
Sorry.
That's okay.
Let's see how we get this. I'm so used to the Zoom anymore. How do we get that to come up?
Right here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Nicole. Okay, so as we've discussed in the past with our partnership with Gallagher on the actuarial analysis, again, the highlights here, ladies and gentlemen, are it's approximately 4 to 5% savings over the fully insured. Statistics that equates to about $2 million. All right, so in high level, it's a $2 million differential. So we know the differences in trend assumption. You'll see in the key assumptions, bottom half of that slide, in medical and pharmaceutical trend, where Florida Blue is still higher than the national averages. That's key for us to consider because, as I mentioned to you in the last meeting, cost of healthcare still isn't going down, so we need to be proactive in that effort. But at the same time, we're still under that point. The other key piece to this slide is the Florida Office of Insurance Regulation Safe Harbor Reserve requirement. That's 60 days that you hold in cash for any run-out liabilities long-term, and that number is $7.6 million. So we talk very carefully and conservatively about how do we get there. Gallagher has indicated, again, those variations in the claim projections. The ProShare piece is the other key piece I wanted to revisit again this morning. You all are concluding a ProShare accounting 3-year period, which should result in an additional $2.2 million. And that will be payable, let's book it right around the start of the second quarter of next year is when that cash should be realized. Couple that with the current reserve balance that you've earned in years past of $1.8 million. You're starting a self-funded program not only in a time in which the district is performing well. We looked at the COVID impact, which there's the dip in claims for the non-elective procedures not occurring this summer, kicking back up this fall. But still, from an overarching claims position, the timing's good. You have cash on hand to start a self-funded program. So you'll see, as we've discussed, the recommendation in conjunction with the pharmacy rebates at the bottom, that was the last bullet. The actuary agrees the potential savings in the recommendation is viable for the school district and a very good time for the school district to transition to self-insurance. A couple other fixed cost reminders. As we mentioned, you have a fantastic wellness program, right? Florida Blue and its partnership with that, Laurel Lingle of my team does just a fantastic job, and it's growing. We believe it can grow even further into other areas of focus based on the data that we'll see out of this that'll help the district control cost even farther. That's going to be a fund item for the district. The online technology that we utilize with Benefit Focus has been tremendous in the efficiencies administratively. Lori and her team do a beautiful job managing to that. That's included in these figures we've shown you. So it's not an additional cost. Ongoing actuarial and compliance services as we partner with Gallagher. There will be some additional spend to make sure we file those reports to the state, make sure everything is compliance, we cross our T's and dot our I's. As Lori mentioned, from the risk management office perspective, an additional FTE of $85,000 also included in the actuarial analysis is already built into that, still resulting in an approximate $2 million savings. The next slide is how do we get to that $7.6 million that the state's going to require us? I covered those highlights briefly, but the only other addition to that would be the $2 million savings. So if you go through this calculation, it's very simple. You add up your current ProShare balance, what we're projecting in savings, projected ProShare distribution for next year, you're $6 million to the good, ahead of the mark, right? So the initial review was over 2 years, we can get to the $7.6 million, but we're going to bring to you today, and the recommendation is going to be that we do it in less than 2 years, and we're going to show you how, and we believe that's the right recommendation. And this funding variance of $1.7 million, you see at the very bottom line, or 3.6 of the current funding rates, right? That's assuming we keep everything right where it is today and we anticipate no increase in medical trend costs, which is not going to be my recommendation because costs aren't going down, okay? And we're going to get to that here in this next slide. Again, I'm going quickly, so if any questions, please stop me. Lori, I'll talk through a couple of these items and then we'll finish together. The first bullet, when you see credible claims experience, you all are large enough. We have 6,000 employees plus in the district, 5,700 approximately enrolled in the program, the health program. You have a mass of which can manage to your claims experience and the stability of that year over year without any subjectivity of being fully insured and how that's managed to. You have control over plan design, administration, stop loss levels. We're going to keep a very close eye on that to make sure that risk isn't too high or too low. We're going to see more reporting, again, with HIPAA compliance. There's not going to be any mention of specific employee information, so that will all maintain its compliance. And the real goal is, how do you create a program that's going to help us with future risk avoidance? How do we control costs better in the long term? So the financial advantage, the recommendation for the board for the 2021 plan year, January 1st, as we develop rates and consider the trend factors, is for the board to consider a 4% funding increase above current, which is still well below trend as we know it, still puts us in a position to satisfy that OIR requirement in less than 2 years, and certainly has been reviewed and budgeted for per review with Ms. Teresa Boston Ellis. So I'll let Lori speak to that a little bit further. The only other comments I want to leave you with is the timing is well. Your claims are where they need to be to do this. You're in a reserve position that majority of every other district doesn't have the opportunity to do across the state. They usually point towards general reserve fund balances to start a program like you're doing, where you're almost $6 million ahead in the first quarter of next year. So you're in a great spot. So with that, the recommendation from our firm is certainly to consider self-funding at that rating level for 2021 and look forward to future conversations for 2022, 2023's renewals and the programs we're developing to further better the health of this district, its people, and control costs all the better. Okay, thank you. Lori?
So generally, just to recap on the funding Thomas was talking about at the 4%, had we not been looking at self-funding this year, we would be back this time of year anyway for our regular fully insured renewal and bringing back whatever percentage would be appropriate to renew. In this case, this is going to be our renewal based on our rates and what we believe is appropriate to fund, so we can start off from the beginning right side up in that same cycle like you saw on the property casualty and build on that fund every year. And every year I talk to Teresa when we get, after the first of the year, we start talking about how much she might have to consider thinking about budget-wise for health when you're working on all your other numbers for your needs in the district. So she's very clear and comfortable with that. There are new issues as far as budgeting. And just going back to, we met with the insurance committee. They're on board with this. So at this point, it would just be your decision on whether you decide you want to go forward with the self-funding or stay the way we are, fully insured.
Ms. McCall?
I am in full agreement that it is time for us to go to self-funding. That way we don't have the back and forth every year of what is our percentage increase, and we have a lot more control. I love the fact that we will have the data and we can look at what wellness programs do we need to put into our system to help keep our employees healthy. So I've sat on the insurance committee for 3 years, and I feel very, very comfortable that this is the right time to do this.
I agree. Well, we've been looking at this for a while, and I think the timing is right, and it benefits our district right now. So,
Ms. Stacy, quickly.
Yes, I agree, and thanks, Thomas. You make it very, very easy to understand. I've been on the board a long time, and the way you're a great teacher. Thank you. You put things very clearly, very systematic order, and I appreciate your clarity. You're doing a good job for us. Thanks.
Ms. Thor?
Such a different conversation than last year.
Yeah.
Yes, it's so exciting. Very encouraged about the expanding the wellness initiatives. That's going to be the key, I think, to just getting all of our employees on board at how important it is to do what they can to stay healthy, and we'll support them in that 100%. Thank you.
That's it. We good. I'm in agreement.
Okay, so you can see on the timeline then, we'll be back on June 23rd to bring this to an official vote for you to formally approve it at a board meeting, and then in the meantime, we will be beginning the process of all the things that have to happen to make this work, the state filings and everything else. So we will go ahead and begin that, and we'll come back periodically at some points to kind of update you and let you know where everything's going. And I expect that it'll require more dialogue more frequently, both with the insurance committee and the board, being that there's a lot more that we'll be doing on our side that Florida Blue used to do before.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any public, there's no public comment for this. Any public comment? There being none, let's move forward. Mr. Robert Knight.
All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the board, Ms. Green, Ms. Prespatino, and Dr. Mayer. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today, giving a construction and design update on various projects. As always, I will be brief but thorough in explaining each of the things and where we're at. Certainly, please feel free to stop me if need be. Mrs. Stacy, I'll touch on every project for your benefit since you're not in the physical presence in the room. So I do not have a PowerPoint, just a handout. It's a 4-pager. It is full, but again, I'll touch on the highlights of each of the projects. So here we go. So we have 2 generator projects, one at Bellevue High School, one at Bellevue Middle School. Both are complete. Generators are installed and operational, and we're in the closeout phase. Because we're at year-end closeout, a lot of these projects in closeout phase, what it really means is once we've paid everybody, those dollars that are left get recycled back into the construction capital fund, and then they are redistributed in the upcoming year when we coordinate with finance on exactly how much is in that pot versus what we had projected to be in the pot the previous year. Bellevue Middle School Hurricane Enhancement Study, there are actually 2 hurricane enhancement projects. One is for the study. This one's valued at $15,000, and I believe the contracts just came back from the state, which allows us to talk to the finance folks about funding that $15,000. This is a reimbursable grant, so the gist of the grant is to have an architect, which we've already received proposals for, go into Bellevue Middle School and study the possibility of strengthening the upper portion of the gymnasium wall all the way around the building to allow it to withstand a stronger hurricane force wind, which would open up that facility for additional space for housing hurricane folks that are coming to the shelter, rather. And so now we'll be able to proceed. Once again, once we talk to the finance department and get the funding in that account, we will be able to proceed with the design and then see the outcome for that. Bellevue Santos Elementary School is receiving 3 air handler units that affect both a classroom building and the cafeteria. They are significantly aged, and we've already begun with removing the existing air system. The equipment should show up shortly, and then we will begin the installation of that equipment, reconnecting everything, and have it back online as we expect by August 1st of this year. So we'll move over to the second page, and these are all alphabetical, but the first project up is the central warehouse roof. You may have seen this for a number of updates. This was something that we went all the way through design, priced, and then there was talk about redoing some new thought process with our existing facilities in the District West area. So this project is on hold, and we've not taken any action as far as actually replacing the roof, since it is possible that warehouse itself might get replaced. District-wide fencing, we have just one line item for about 3 different grants for this. You may recall previously all the high schools were done under one grant. We had a different grant doing select schools, and now we're on our 3rd version of a security grant. This would involve College Park Elementary, East Marion Elementary, Spar Elementary, and potentially Stanton Weirsdale Elementary if those funds are there. So far, College Park Elementary is the furthest along. We've completed drawings. We have a pre-bid meeting next week with the contractor and the potential subcontractors, and we've just wound down the design process for East Marion Elementary, and Spar Elementary is in process.
College Park isn't complete? The fencing isn't complete? I thought it was complete.
You're right, I'm sorry. This is a misstep here. College Park Elementary, construction drawings. It should say the construction for College Park Elementary School is complete. Sorry, I read my own note. It said drawings. The drawings for East Marion Elementary, so construction at College Park is complete. That's why we spent $227,000.
Yes, okay.
Sorry, and the design for East Marion Elementary School and Spar is complete. It's beyond have begun, and we have next Stanton Wursdale is the fourth school of that package, and we have a pre-bid meeting for East Marion Elementary School next week. Apologize for that. I'll correct this when I send it out district-wide tomorrow. Yes, because it says quite, honestly, the next phrase is April 14th, the board approved the GMP. So, district-wide hurricane enhancements. This is the second hurricane enhancement project. The reimbursement grant value is $2,780,373.75. And like I said, I believe just yesterday I heard that the state had sent that contract back to us approved. What that means now is we sit down with the finance department to strategize. Because it's reimbursement, we have to have the money up front to start it. So we'll have to get strategic about, we don't have $2.8 million sitting around not doing anything to start everything at one shot. So we'll go through design and probably stagger those projects because we have up till September of 2022 to complete them. And no doubt, probably the finance department at some point, or us both combined, will come back to the board to discuss the funding plan, because we'll have to do it stages, get reimbursement for the first project done to use that to fuel the money for the second project, and so on and so forth, again, because we don't have a cash pot of $2,780,000 sitting there right now for this project. District-wide storage is well underway. This is where we are constructing metal buildings at our compound, predominantly for the maintenance folks, risk management folks, and even us to a degree. The structural steel is up on one building and the skin is going on, and the structural steel is just about up on the second building. We expect to be done on or before October 1st of 2020, and based on the progression, unless weather becomes a factor, they'll probably beat that schedule. At Dunellen High School, it's one of the larger projects we're doing right now. This is a complete replacement of the air conditioning system at the school. It involves replacing the chill water plant, repiping the chiller system, and going into the building, removing all the old air handlers and some of the piping and duct work, not all of it, but a good chunk of it, and then replacing it. We've had to take down ceilings. I was in there last week and looks totally different because of all the plastic and the protections up, but the chill water plant has been installed. It is not operational yet because we have to pipe it to all the units. All the equipment is on site, and about 50% of the air handlers have been installed. So the bulk of June will consist of completing the installation of the air handling equipment. We'll be putting the duct work in. We've already actually started as of this week. And the next month, we will be completing the piping, the electrical tie-ins, and then replacing all the ceilings. And so by the time that folks are coming back by August 3rd, the air should be on, we should be set up, and it'll look a little different, certainly feel a lot different. We did find a lot of duct work up in the ceilings was not even connected. Over time, it had just simply disintegrated and fallen apart, and we were probably blowing half of our air up in the attic and not into the classrooms. And so it definitely is good that we are replacing all those systems as we speak. So we'll go over to the next page. Excuse me, Dunellen Middle School re-roofed the covered walkways. This project has taken a while, mostly because of the lead time for the manufacturing of the covered walkways. But we poured the foundations over the winter break and the spring break. We procured the canopies, and we are currently demolishing the existing covered walkway. It's just about done, and the aluminum canopies are expected to arrive within the next 2 weeks, and then those will be erected. We'll put some lighting underneath it, and that will complete the project. We did fix a drainage issue that was there as well in the month of May. Evergreen Elementary School is also receiving an air conditioning replacement. 2/3 of that project was done prior to now. It was done last summer. We did all the piping, and the previous summer we did all the cooling towers. What's left to do is the air handlers that are up in the mezzanine. And because the contractor that was pricing it just before the COVID-19 issues really impacted our society lost a number of the bidders, we are going to reprice this in the fall when there is less pressure on manufacturers to get equipment, because that is an issue we've run across where manufacturers have shut down their own plants to sanitize, or they don't have as many workers, and so their production lines have slowed considerably. So by the fall, we are hoping and expecting that we'll have overcome this hump of mass buying by a lot of people back in March to quickly secure equipment, and we'll be pricing that and expecting to complete that project next summer, just because it's very difficult to do that with the students there. In our building, we're receiving a major upgrade in our air conditioning system. We had to replace the roof. It was beyond shot, and every day we have new dust on our shirts and trousers and what have you. We are about 50% done the first phase of that in our building. We have 3 buildings to do. They will be there a while. October 30th is when we expect that to be complete. It consists of replacing all the air conditioning equipment, just like Dunellen. Half our ductwork wasn't even connected to anything. It was blowing all over the attic. Forest High School chiller replacement. We have started on that. We've already replaced 1 chiller previously. We have 2 more to go. The equipment delivery date is in June, but it is in some jeopardy because we were notified by the manufacturer that they shut down their plant for 2 weeks to completely sanitize. They have 1 production line back up and running, and we are scheduled to be in that production line. But sometime in the month of April, the federal government did procure a bunch of air conditioning equipment to run some of these field hospitals that were put up around the country, and so a lot of clients got bumped. Ours, I believe, was already in the production line, but it has been slowed. So we don't have a new fixed date in the month of June. We're hopeful that it still will be June, but we were notified that there could be a delay. There's not necessarily a delay yet. The good news is, because we built the manifold structure when we did the first chiller changeover, we could do each chiller independently and not affect school. So it actually is something that could be done if students are back and for whatever reason there is a delay in the equipment, because we have 1 of the 3 replaced already, and we can do the other ones in phases and not have to shut the whole plant down. Last project on this sheet is Harborview Elementary School. They're receiving a new cooling tower and pumps. Usually takes about 2 months to do this work. We started with the prep work. We have to pour slab outside, dismantle the building because the existing cooling tower is inside the building. So we have to remove part of the roof and wall to get it out, put those systems back, put the pumps in, and install the new cooling tower. So that was ordered sometime back, and we expect right now that the completion date would be July 29th for that project. And that brings us to the last page as far as the updates. MTI replacement, this is where we are looking to relocate the MTI school. We are in a program verification phase. This is where the folks at the Technical and Vocational Education Group will be informing us. They've already had a couple meetings with us, what kinds of programs they look to teach there. Are we simply moving the ones over from MTI? Are we starting anything new? And we're in process right now of putting numbers together to determine, well, how many square feet would that be? What would be the cost be? What types of equipment would be needed? This usually takes a little bit of time to do, and I'm sure down the road we'll be looking to give the board an update on that specific project when we come back to the board and talk about the District East project as well. North Marion High School, we have the 50% Phase 3 drawings have been received and reviewed. Some of the early estimates tell us that if things stand as they are, we could be as much as $2 million over the construction budget on that project. Now, some of these numbers are a little bit high on purpose because we have not completed design. For instance, the fire suppression system has not been completed. We know that figure is high. These are not bids. These are not solicited numbers from subcontractors. It's the general contractor thinking of every possible cost. We would hope and think that it's not actually $2 million over budget. However, if we do expect with these numbers that it would be over budget at least by $1 million, if not more, just because we're seeing the trend in construction In the last 2 years, we've seen square foot costs rise over $100 a square foot. I don't believe that has ever happened in the history of humanity. 100. We built Forest High School for, I think it was $110 a square foot 15 years ago. We built Wyoming Park's 2 classroom wings for $180 a square foot 2 years ago. This $2 million overage is $375 a square foot. That is approaching scientific lab style construction, where you have high-end systems to filter air, high-end sterile systems, and big machinery to run equipment. We don't think it's going to be $375 a square foot, but we've already begun the process of where would we get, even if it's not $2 million, say it's only $1 million, where would we get those funds? And right now, the biggest cash cow, there's really 2 areas. One would be any new money that comes in a future year that's not yet dedicated, and the other would be some of the projects that we have delayed at MTI. Now, we don't want to rob from Peter to pay Paul. There's nothing the board has to do at this point because we have not officially priced it, but we are sitting down next week, if I can get all the parties together with the architect and the contractor, to re-review the design and look for other areas of money. You know, if the canopies are too high, maybe we extend the building's roof and not put expensive aluminum canopies in and simply carry out the trusses further. If stucco is too expensive, perhaps we go to a different finish. If the outdoor dining with 2 levels because of handicap accessibility is too much, maybe we drop the entire outdoor dining so there is no ramp. And we have to put a stair in the back side, but that's a lot cheaper than some of the ramping issues we're facing. We've already looked at site. So just yesterday I sat with my staff to create a hot list of things to target, and we'll be sitting down with the folks and literally doing an exercise on what does that drop us to square foot wise? What does that drop us to per square foot cost wise? But I did, when we got these numbers very recently, wanted to share with the board that the trend right now is projecting $2 million over the budget. Doesn't mean it will be, but it is obviously some area of concern for all of us. The only good news at North Marion High School is the generator that was slated to go there for the future cafeteria is installed. Of course, it's not running anything at the moment because it's needing a cafeteria to hook up to it, but we have run the conduits out there, and so that generator is there and available when we get the cafeteria done. Oakcrest is a project that we postponed because we didn't have the funds to do it, and we did need some of those funds at other projects like Bellevue Santos Air Conditioning and Dunellen High School. Oakcrest was almost more of a wish list than a need. They have a chill water plant. Our maintenance folks were hoping to get some additional redundancy built in, and perhaps down the road in the future we can, but we've scuttled that project to take care of other needs. Osceola Middle School's dining facility, we have priced it. We have permitted drawings. That project came in $745,000 over the budget, and this was after we did some redesign. And that square foot cost, just in case you're curious, is $304 a square foot. Again, 2 years ago, $180, 2 years into the future, which is the now, $304. We were seeing these trends in construction before the virus, so want to make sure that this is not related to the virus. This is related to 49-year low previously on unemployment. There was a tremendous boom, and because we only get our funding once a year and have to project out, it's really hard to predict some of these things, but numbers were climbing all through the school year, and we went through an exercise 3 months ago to trim and cut. It was almost $1 million. We got it down to $745. Now, the options, because this one is ready to go out of the box in terms of pricing, for the board is obviously not do the project, not necessarily something we would recommend. The second option is to postpone and try and reprice, but quite honestly, unless you postpone any project for a year, you're not going to see the prices come down, because if COVID-19 affects the reopening of manufacturers and contractors, you'll have fewer people to pick from, which will drive the price up rather than down. We do have a suggested funding plan for the $745,000 shortfall. In the notes here, it says we project using funds from projects that haven't started. We have $962,000 in the budget now that is earmarked for debt payments for the new MTI school. We have not actually taken a loan, so there is no actual debt payment in the 1920 school year. So we have $962,000 that will be rolling over, not tied to anything. I would propose that this be a target for us to use at Osceola Middle. That's not necessarily going to use that whole amount, but that would cover that difference and have a few $100,000 left, either for North Marion High School's cafeteria when the time comes, or some other project. Actually, we could use those funds to get started on the hurricane hardening project just to jumpstart those. So I would be asking if there is any thoughts on the funding of that, if the board still does want to continue with the Osceola Middle dining facility. That would be the easiest thing, is to take this $962,000 that is sitting there doing nothing at the moment because there is no debt to repay yet. That's about the only suggestion I have. The other suggestions would be to look at projects that we haven't started, and most of those are related to MTI or District East. So
We've promised the kids and the parents this Osceola cafeteria. I mean, I'm going to suggest we look at what you're doing and try to get that down even farther if we can. I mean, it's just like North Marion Middle School cafeteria.
Well, I'm thinking of North Marion High.
North Marion High.
We've been working on North Marion High for years.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at the dates and I'm like, why is it taking so long? But it seems like Osceola was just brought to us and it's going to be done. The anticipated time was February.
Well, North Marion High is
2021.
twice as large, not only in scale the cafeteria, but remember, there is an entire remodeling component with North Marion High School. We're gutting the interior of the existing cafeteria. We're going to the multipurpose room and gutting that and adding spaces there. Osceola Middle actually drove the design to be so simplistic because it is so tight. It's just a box with a couple of bathrooms and a kitchen in it. North Marion High School has serious challenges with the chill water line that's there. The topography is completely different. We're relocating some of the agricultural aspects of education. So it is a much more in-depth project. Plus, it was held up a little bit with talk about, is it going to become a shelter or not? We got the Osceola Middle okay pretty early on. North Marion High, there was still some discussion at one time about...
Yeah, but this has been long going. This has been years and years and years. And I think we really need to seriously focus on North Marion High School. I mean, even before Nancy and Mr. Cummings were there, as a board, we were there. We had lunch, and it's just been in discussion. So this right here, to see this a little bit, is a little bit of a hard pill for me to swallow. And I think we need to truly focus on North Marion High cafeteria at this point, and stretching it out and like the generator talk. I mean, that was drug out for months, and here we are, we're still talking about it, and maybe a year later. So those are just.
So what would be the time frame for North Marion?
Well, right now we're in phase 3 design. So in
2021?
Well, in about 2 months, we would expect to receive a set, or earlier than 2 months. I would say the max window would be up to 2 months out, and the bidding process and pricing. So we would have price by end of summer. If we got that price and continued to move forward on North Marion High School, it would take about 10 months of actual construction time plus 2 months of submittals and board approval. So that's a year. It would be right about August of 2021 for the cafeteria. Then we would have to go into the existing building and do the renovation work after that, because obviously we can't start that till the new cafeteria is open.
So with the new cafeteria, if it was completed in June, you said June or August 2021, would it be usable?
Yes.
So
Yeah, we would open it up.
Be able to move there while you got into other stuff.
Yes, we would flip the cafeteria over during the summer of next year if we were to go ahead and proceed. They would open up in the new facility, then we would gut the old cafeteria and proceed with the renovation work there.
And Osceola's would be complete in February?
Yes, it's a much smaller school. There's really no site work. It'll take less time to build Osceola than North Marion because of the size. You're talking a very small middle school versus a fairly good-sized high school.
Yeah, but we just found out about Osceola, last month? When did we first?
better than a year ago. Osceola Middle's cafeteria's been
Well,
on.
some, but like the plans, we've talked about it some,
Right,
but like
that-
the plans.
Phase 3. We've been working on Osceola's design
That's
since
what I'm thinking of.
2019.
Think about when we actually saw the drawing.
Yes.
We've been working on it since about 2019, and I.
Early
You
2019.
know, I mean, those kids, I hear what you're saying, Kelly, with North Marion High, and I want that cafeteria completed, but yeah, these kids start lunch because they have to share that cafeteria at 9:30 in the morning. I mean, it's just,
Just what? Osceola gets the cafeteria and North Marion doesn't? I mean, because there's some money, or, you know, I just think we need to think about this.
Well, we really don't know how many kids are going to be back on campuses this fall. You know, we're hopeful that many will come back and will be able to come back safely. So there's that. North Marion High School, anyone that's ever gone up there during the lunch periods and experienced that knows exactly what Board Member King is talking about. And I do feel like we prioritize and then we have to reprioritize. Obviously, no one knew that COVID was going to happen. No one knew that employment was going to change. But the needs remain. The needs remain. And North Marion High School has been working under these constraints for years. And I would argue that it is also likely more unsafe to continue the current pattern of providing meals at North Marion High School than it is at Osceola Middle School. I love Osceola Middle School's plan. It's beautiful. To create a box and still have it look so nice is impressive. But when I look at it just from a simple needs base and safety, I have to go with North Marion. I have to go with North Marion High as a priority.
Can I say something?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm in 100% agreement with King and Thrower. I feel like North Marion High School has been out of sight, out of mind. And I feel that it should be receiving the same level of priority that Osceola's receiving. And I don't know where we are on the funding, and if you can do both schools at the same time, but I don't expect Osceola to be funded, and then we have to, find some money again for North Marion. If we can do them simultaneously, I'm fine with that, but I do not support doing Osceola off the backs of North Marion just because North Marion's further away, we don't see it as much, or whatever's going on. I've been talking about North Marion for so many years. I don't even remember when we started the discussion. Miss King, you weren't even on the board. And so I'm getting real bored with that school being put on the back burner, and I do not support funding Osceola over that one. If we can do them both at the same time, I'm fine. I will not support taking money out of the North Marion budget to build Osceola.
Don't
So
think
does
that's
this-
what's being proposed.
So we can do both at the same time, correct?
You can do both at the same time, but what it means is that you, in order to account for these shortfalls at both schools, would have to look at projects not yet started. Most of those projects right now are at MTI, not building a new school, but at the MTI District East campus. So fire alarm systems, air conditioner replacements, piping system replacements at MTI. That's where most of the money is right now that's not earmarked for an active project. So say the board decides we do them both, what we would do is sit down with the finance department, come back to the board and say, okay, if it's $2 million over, we could take $2 million out of the MTI air conditioner replacement project and then try to fund that project in a future year. Or obviously if you abandon that site at some point down the road, then you would need to replace those funds for that.
Okay.
So that's really the only opportunity as far as funding that exists because these other projects on this list obviously have already started, and none of them are big enough to cancel. They're all $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 projects.
And the Osceola North Marion projects impact, I would think, a lot more students than what we were talking about with MTI. We just don't have that many kids at MTI.
Right.
And both of these projects, both of them are priority.
Yes.
Both of them have to be priority.
Yes, they're both.
Yeah, we were only about 30 days apart on picking the architects
North
because
Marion.
they were the two big projects that came up
Yeah. Because
prior to
North
last
Marion,
budget year.
North Marion has been having that issue with their cafeteria for years. I went to Osceola. Osceola was having that for years. So they're both equal priority. It's just that they were talking about North Marion before they ever start talking about
Correct.
Osceola's.
North Marion is a much bigger, more expensive project.
So we need to try to, I think we need to look at that option, what you're talking about, of doing both at the same time. However, looking at MTI, it's a possibility we may not even be at MTI and how many students are at MTI. So can we look at that, board? Y'all want to look at that option?
fine.
Because we need to, I think both of them need to be priority. We need to get both of them done in 2021 if all possible.
Right, and also trigger some more decision-making on what we're actually going to talk about doing with MTI.
Exactly.
Right, exactly. Because you don't want to put money into somewhere you're not going to be.
Right.
So, all
I
right.
do have to come back at some point to the board for Phase 3 at North Marion High School like we did at Osceola
Correct.
Middle. We anticipate being ready to come back in the month of July. Maybe by then, we'll have had a chance to sit down with finance and work some more numbers. And so maybe what I would like to do, instead of a traditional Phase 3, here's what's been drawn, is talk about the funding plan for both those schools as well, or at least North Marion High School for now. Now, I do believe that we were looking to try to get the Osceola Middle dining facility on the board, so it sounds to me like perhaps hold off until we come back to the board to talk about both simultaneous. Is that the desire? Okay, I will make sure.
I mean, you guys, I'm saying yes.
That's fine.
Sorry,
That's fine. Does the North Marion cafeteria, this number at this point does not include any of the renovation to the old cafeteria?
No.
This is strictly the number
This
for
is
the new
strictly the
cafeteria?
new building.
So the $2 million over is not including,
Right. Right now, we don't have good numbers on the renovation because the drawings just came in for the renovation piece. But if I had, judging based on the trend in construction on square foot costs, off the top of my head, which is dangerous because I could be 50% off, I would say that it could be close to $800,000 or $900,000 to do that work. Because the easy stuff is close the wall off of the cafeteria, which probably should have been done when the school got built. Not quite sure what drove that decision. That's been part of the problem all along. But the multipurpose area is a big open space.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily need some of the spaces that the state says we could put there. Obviously, if you gave a student activity room and some vocational testing areas, it would no doubt assist a school, but it could also be used as flex space. But that's probably net. We are probably more like 2.7, 2.8 net over the current construction budget for every single thing associated with the project. But some of those numbers,
right,
they're wild because we can't even put our finger on whether that's a realistic cost right now. The industry, there's not many people to talk to, and manufacturing plants are still working from home. Number one, and number two, we haven't completely finished design. I just wanted to bring to the board's attention the current trending based on industry numbers. So what I'll do then is I'll schedule, I guess, through the administrative assistant office, through the superintendent's office, rather, to come back for a Phase 3 presentation on the cafeteria. We'll hold off on any new action on Osceola Middle and push North Marion High as far as we can in terms of completion and try to come back with revised numbers as well as the funding plan. Does that sound like
can you try and
You're all
have
looking
something for, let me see, I'm looking at the work. We have one work session like in July 16th. Is that too soon?
Probably not, because even if we're tweaking some mechanical systems, it's not going to have a dire impact on the budget or on the presentation, because most of what we present is the size, the scale, the shape, the look, the location of it. You all are probably not interested in how many pipe fittings are in the to a water pipe. So if we're still tweaking those, it won't impact Phase 3 and should not drastically impact cost, because most of the cost is in the building, not so much in some fittings or small elements elsewhere.
Let's shoot for July 16th.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thanks very much. Appreciate the
Thank you, Mr. Lynn.
guidance. Last thing to talk about is Reddick Collier Elementary School's drinking water chlorination pipe. This work was completed, and about a week ago, the Department of Environmental Protection gave clearance on that system to go into use. Obviously, there's not many people at the school at the moment to use it, but that chlorination system is now in use, and we are using one of the newer wells at that school that has had far less issues with water clarity. So, knock on wood, this should take care of the previous issues with water discoloration, and certainly gives us a bigger well to work from. The older well just was very small, and that gave us some of the problems with the water clarity. And that's it as far as construction design updates. Unless you have any questions, that's all I have for you this morning.
Any public comment? Board members, anything? I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Knight.
Okay, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Board concerns? Ms. Presbitino, anything? Attorney Green?
No, thank you.
Dr. Mayor?
Officer Smith, thanks for being here today. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Officer Smith. Kevin? Ms. Stacy?
Nope.
Thank you. Ms. McCall?
Just a couple of things. I know we have a board meeting coming up, but I just want to thank everybody. School is out. School was over Monday, and I want to thank everybody that has worked so incredibly hard. Thanks our parents who had to homeschool their children and didn't plan on doing that, our incredible teachers and staff. So everybody breathe deep and have a safe summer vacation, and hopefully we'll see you back in your classrooms in August. The strategic plan, as Kevin talked about, we had updated it last year, and of course we were going to try to do that again this year. I think it's going to be difficult to do that since we didn't have our FSAs, so we really need to think about just continuing with it as is, and then of course when our new super gets here, she may have some other comments about that. So I'd like to go ahead and get it up, Kevin, as quickly as we can, just so our community can see it.
Ms. King?
That's all.
Okay. Ms. King didn't have anything. Be safe. Miss. Right. Ms. Thorne.
Yes, I do have a couple of things. The first one that's on my mind is regarding the refunds to parents and families because of different events that were canceled because of COVID. The Hilton got a bad rap on social media, and so I hope it's very clear now to everyone in the community that the Hilton continues to be a fantastic partner with our school system, and they have either have already or will be taking care of that, and in partnership with the school boards so that families are not out any money. There was one other that was brought to my attention from a company called EF, and it was a trip, I think, to Iceland for some kids. And apparently EF is holding money back from the families instead of refunding. So I'm not sure what we can do about that, but
Actually, that one is, I think that was a travel agency or something like that, and the parents or whoever have to actually go through that company to EF to get it.
I responded to that email because he
Yeah.
emailed me. They're an independent agency.
Right.
But we might
We may need to
let them know that we're a little unhappy with doing,
business
having
like
them.
that, yeah.
right.
Now, I don't
We
know,
wanna
and I
have a
don't,
relationship with.
and I don't know what type of contract they signed. I don't know if they had any non-refundable
We
things
don't
in
have
there.
any-
We don't have anything to do with that.
Right, and I understand that, and we actually had students from EF stay with us one year. But the fact of the matter is that even the airlines, you
Correct.
know, started giving cash back, and
Which
that's.
ones? Because they won't give me mine.
They won't? Oh, well, we'll have to talk. So again, grace and compassion, and whatever we can do to help our families, because I think it was something to the tune of $1,200 or $1,300.
I had asked the parent to forward me the string of emails he had sent them in anticipation on having some conversation, but I've yet to get that. So if they reach back out to you, would you ask them to send me that?
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, great. And then the second thing that's on my mind, and Attorney Green, feel free to stop me because this is uncharted territory for me, but it's something that's continued to keep me up at night. It's regarding a vote to prevent any more exposure to the board regarding a case with an employee and settling it. And I voted for that to go ahead and settle again to reduce the exposure to the district. However, I'm still laying awake at night because what I'd like to propose, if this is something that can be done, and I'd be happy to draft the letter and have you review it, to the Education Practices Commission. Is that something that I would have to do on my own, or is it something that we could all sign if we wanted to? I have grave concerns about this particular case, and I know it's already up there, but there hasn't been any movement on it at all, and it's been sitting there since March. And I don't want any more exposure to our students' safety that I have any way of helping stop.
I'm happy to talk to you about that. I'm not quite sure what case and where it is in the process.
Right, and I didn't want to bring up any names or initials or anything unless it was okay to do that. And if that helps clarify, then I'm happy to, but that's why I was treading very lightly.
From March, that's still a reasonable timeline.
Correct.
With the backlog they have.
Especially with the COVID.
Feels unreasonable to me, but I
Understood. But it's not out of the ordinary.
I did check on that one as well, because I got folk asking me about that same thing. And because of COVID, their case log is backed up. So, and even if it had been, they still would not have gotten to it by now anyway. So it may be later, much later this year before they ever get to that one particular one. And I know the one you're talking about.
Well, and I hadn't had anyone come to me. This is just my own personal concern.
Right.
And I really vacillated about how to vote on it. I'm always conscious of reducing our liability and actually having someone return to us because we might have lost. And so there was so much to it. But I think I've said this before in meetings that when it's in my mind and it doesn't go away, I have to say something. So, all right, we will talk. And then the next thing I have on my mind is regarding our summer VPK program. I understand that Dr. Ellers is going to be leaving us, and there were very solid plans that were in place that we heard about for how things were going to be rolled out this summer for our VPK kids, and that ties directly, in my mind, to future proficiency.
Let me ask a question. Ms. Ellers went to turnaround schools, correct? Was she still doing VPK?
She was the director of turnaround and early learning.
Okay, I got you.
She has assured me that plans are in place. What I can have her send the board a detailed email on her plans and how she's going to follow through with those.
And yes, and I would assume that would include who's going to be taking over the reins, so to speak, because it sounds like it was a pretty heavy lift, with the plans that were in mind, and there's a lot to it with the safety piece. And
Dr. Gullett and I have been chatting about that, and she's aware.
Okay, all right, good. And then the last thing that's on my mind is I was involved in a couple of budget discussions. It's sounding quite grim at the moment in terms of our budget. I'm so tired of saying, but no one really knows what's going to happen. Years ago, when we went through the Great Recession, everything was very, very grim, and then we got a nice transfusion of money from ARA funds, but it was too late, and we lost a lot of great employees because of that. And I don't want to make the same mistake again. And I know we're at the mercy of the state and the feds in terms of when money comes down to us. However, when I'm hearing about chopping at the school level, there has to be another way. There has to be another way. If we are ever going to get to proficiency in this school system, it's not going to be by cutting the very folks that are working directly with kids every day and supporting them. And I'm going to speak specifically for a second about our classroom paraprofessionals. I have yet to hear of a county that functions without a robust cadre of classroom paraprofessionals. One that comes to mind that does not function with a robust cadre of classroom paraprofessionals is Hillsborough County. They have 7 elementary schools under external operation at this time. So it's time to think outside the box and put it out there to all of our employees that this continued uncertainty is so frustrating, and anything that any employee that we currently have can think of to help us with this budget, creative ideas. Years ago, an employee put forth, let's just turn off our computers at night. And it saved so much energy. It was so simple. Sometimes the simple things, we're too close to it and we don't see them. But I will never support chopping away at the staff that makes it happen on a daily basis for our kids. So we just have to come up with as many other ideas as we can. We have to have a balanced budget. I know that. However, we're breaking our own backs. Our mission is to create solid, proficient citizens coming out of our school system, and cutting at the school level is just not the way to do it. So we've got some big decisions to make, and we need all the help we can get. I continue to appreciate everyone. I definitely share what you shared, Ms. McCall, about thanking everyone, and I especially want to say thank you to our retirees. So there are quite a few people retired, and I attended a few of those, and I wish you a very long, happy, and productive retirement, and thank you so much for your service. Everyone else, it's time to come together like never before and just make it happen for our kids. That's what we're here for. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Ms. Orr. First, let me start by saying this. I want to thank all of our districts, all of our staff, not just district staff, all of our staff, our teachers, everyone that works for this district, every student and every parent in this county. We got through this year. This was a difficult, the ending of this school term got to be very, very difficult for everybody. So I want to thank you for being resilient, for being flexible, for being able to make quick adjustments. We made those adjustments almost overnight, and we got through it. You can't take people for granted in what they did and how they modified their lives to make sure their education continued. And I thank Dr. Mayer and her staff for being creative in ways of facilitating this and making sure that education continued in such a way that we didn't leave anybody behind. And we're praying that we'll be having everybody back in front of us very, very soon. We want them to be back in front of us soon, but we just want to make sure we're doing it the right way. So again, we're on summer vacation, summer break. Please be safe. Please be smart. And we look forward to seeing you back in the fall. But let me say this: the work does still continue. There's some folks that are still working over the summer, and there's a lot of people that's working, trying to put together a plan for what the fall is going to look like. Dr. Mayer has already been in contact with Dr. Gullah, that she just shared a second ago, and they're going to make a plan that's going to be great for this school district. So I'm grateful for that. I too, Ms. Thor, got some of the communications about the Hilton. The Hilton never said that they were not going to refund any money. Let me say that for the record. They never said it. It was just, I guess, some bad misunderstanding, and they have already returned the funds. So, for the record, they have already did that, and it was in the process when the conversation came up. So, they have continued to be a good partner with our school district and with North Marion, and they will continue to be that. And I want to apologize to them if there's any negative flack that they received, because the perception was that they were not, and that was never the case. That had not been the case. That was never the case. And I guess some people heard, oh, they're not giving back any money. I was getting all kind of stuff. Can you help with this? And I was like, it was already in progress.
Catches fire on social media.
Yeah, and yeah, things will catch fire on social media when they didn't hear the whole conversation. And I think that's what it was. It was a miscommunication. So, Hilton, we thank you guys, and we look forward to continued relationship that we do have with you all. The other thing is the budget, as Ms. Thor just brought up. I'm glad you guys all had the opportunity to sit with that committee and to see where we are. And I'm with Ms. Thor. I don't believe that where we're going to make adjustments, I don't believe that it will come out of the classrooms. I don't believe that. I believe that we're going to make smart adjustments where we need to make smart adjustments. And it's going to be tight. And I that's why I kept saying what I was saying. It's going to be tight. We're going to have to make tough decisions, and we're going to have to do some creative things. But I trust and believe that the people that Ms. Boston Ellis and her team and all the other players on that committee are going to give us the best options that we can do for our district and for our classrooms and our students and our staff. I just believe that I think we don't want to get to the point, as you said, in 2008 where we were cutting, where people were losing jobs. I think priority is one of the priorities has to be trying to maintain the people that we have and not doing it on the backs of anybody, where we're not losing people, and making sure that these kids are taken care of. Education is our business, so we have to make sure that we educate all the way through. Does that mean we're going to have to make some tough decisions? Yeah, we're going to have to make some, but I trust that the board members that I sit on this board with are going to do the best thing and the right thing for everybody, and I believe that. So get ready for those tough decisions. To our graduates,
We have to have those tough
yeah,
conversations.
we have to have those tough conversations.
And we don't want to affect the classroom, but we have to have those tough conversations.
Have to. And to our graduates, graduations starting, is it next week? Next week.
Next Friday, the
Next
12th.
Friday, the 12th. The 12th, and well, actually on the 11th. Actually, the 11th, because Mr. Kelly sent out something, board members, he wants us to please let him know which ones we're coming to. Please, I think his is on the 11th, starting at 9 o'clock, all the way up to 8:30 at night at the drive-in. So we need to look at those, and but we're looking forward to graduation and doing what we need to do. Parents, graduates, difficult year, difficult graduations, but we're going to celebrate you because your accomplishments are not undervalued, underrated. We are truly proud of what you've been able to pull out these last few months, and we're just grateful that you guys are graduating and that we're able to have some type of ceremony. It's not going to look like what we've always seen graduations look like, but in difficult times you have to make difficult decisions and we have to adjust. So I appreciate the families for being flexible with us, and once parents, please celebrate your kid as much as you can. I don't mind getting the emails, I don't mind getting the phone calls when people are calling me about graduation, because the parents have to be the advocate for their kids. But let me give you just this for free. Help them. I know they're getting 2 tickets. Help them make that decision make it easier for that kid and not put any undue stress on them trying to decide on who should be there. Let's be the adults in this situation and help that kid make that decision. You just make it for them and make it a little bit easier for them. And I think it'll remove some of the anxiety. When I hear kids saying, I don't want to participate in my graduation because I don't know whether to bring my dad or my stepdad or my mom or my stepmom. Come on, parents, don't do that to the kid. Help those kids with that. And somebody has to. It's just being sacrificial, and sacrificing for that kid. So I encourage you to help the kids with that thing. Finally, and this is Reverend Cummings. This is Eric. We are all in a different time. We're dealing with COVID-19. We're dealing with unrest, civil unrest around our country. I just encourage everyone to please be smart, please be safe. We all watch the news. We've been inundated with seeing protests and demonstrations and all that. It's our constitutional right to protest. This country was started on protests, but protests, smart protests, peaceful protests, those type of protests bring about true change. I want to personally commend the protests that were here in Marion County. I was actually in one of them on Sunday, and the organizers, and to our chief of police, and to our Sheriff Willie Woods and Chief Greg Graham, who actually participated. We walked side by side in these protests. Change will come. Change is coming, and it comes. And the thing that I saw was that it was young people, millennials, who were starting to get engaged and to be actively conscious about what's going on. It should not take someone losing their life for us to do that, though. But if that's what has happened and is causing us to do that, let's make this opportunity to make change. Let it be a true movement and not just a moment. If we do that, and all of us are working together. I've talked to many people. I've talked to law enforcement, and none of us agree with what happened, but we do agree that change is coming and that we have to make a change. So please be safe in your protests, and please be smart. Marion County is not like Los Angeles or New York. We are a different type of community, and we can make, there are things that need to be changed. We can make those changes in a smart way, in a very smart way. So again, thank you guys for everything this morning, and if there's be no further comment, Officer Smith, thank you as well. Thank you for being here. If there's no further comments, meeting is adjourned at 12:28.